trap queen, let it hit the bando. We be counting up, watch our fighting bands go. We just selling dope, talking mention Lambos. Got 50, 60 grams, probably 100 grams though. Man, I swear I love her, how she worked the damn pole. Hit the strip club, we be letting bands go.
Charles, it's a remarkably presidential tune right there. Hello.
Great to see you, Jason.
And welcome to our guest. Whoops. Sorry, Tom, I got a little hung up on the headset there.
That's okay.
How are you, sir? Welcome.
You're welcome.
Lovely to have you here. Charles, can you introduce the audience to our guest?
Sure.
Please?
We are honored today to have Tom Pauken with us here. Tom Pauken II.
Yeah, thank you.
All the way from China, as Trump would say.
Right.
Here to do some Christmas shopping, I guess.
Yes.
And, he's an author, and we're going to spend some time going through his excellent book, which is right here. And it's available, I checked, on Amazon and
Good.
Barnes & Noble and all sorts of other different ways. We're going to spend some time with him after we go through the introductory portion of the show, talking about the current situation in China and from China's perspective, America's perspective. Is there scope to think about getting a deal done, and
Sure.
if so, on what basis? So thank you so much for making a special trip here.
Sure.
And I hope you'll enjoy the beginning, middle, and end of the show as well.
Well, I do love the photo.
Well, this is the art department.
Okay.
That does extensive work. We've done, Jason has done, I think, well, at this point, hundreds of these, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Beyond simply the ones that he does in connection with this show, Sunday with Charles, and closing in the show we do on Wednesday. But the idea we take is to try to pick a movie or some other media production that people have heard of, and then we change the title a bit.
Okay.
And then we change the artwork a lot.
Sure.
And in this case, we've been on a campaign to talk about how prior to Donald Trump, the last 4 American presidents have basically destroyed the American worker.
I would agree.
And they've enriched
Yes.
cronies in both political parties, and it's just way past time for this, excuse my language, it's a technical economic term, bullshit. It's way past time for this bullshit to stop. It's got to
Sure.
stop. And we have this dissonance in America where people who maybe aren't following the news anymore because they're sick of it, can't find any news in the so-called, mainstream media, established media. They know what's going on in their daily lives. They know that prior to 1989, really prior to 1994, you could check out on a Friday and you didn't have to work Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday. You didn't have to check up the internet, what's going on. You didn't have to worry about something that might affect your job,
Exactly. Yeah.
security and all that kind of stuff. And pay, before you start considering the soft issue, which I think is actually a hard issue, that you're working many more hours for free.
Yeah.
Even taking that out of the equation, just saying, let's use the number of hours they say I'm working
Sure.
in 89 and the number of hours in theory I'm working, my hourly pay has actually declined.
Of course.
Because you can't adjust it by inflation. You have to adjust it by, in my view, I think in Jason's view, you have to adjust it by the cost of things, or the degree to which things that can change your life have increased in cost. So the cost of an Ivy League education has gone way, way up faster than inflation. So when you start looking at it that way and you say, I could have made in '89 $60,000 a year or whatever the number was, and now I come out of college and I'm making $100,000 if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Right? In no way have you been compensated for this,
Sure.
these steep increases that have been caused by these boneheads, both Bushes, the Clintons, and the Obamas, who are economically illiterate.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I've addressed those issues a lot. It seems as if what you're saying, and partly I think it's because of the social media, so we're stuck 24/7 knowing everything that's going on and having your boss chat with you all the time, even on weekends. When I was younger, or I'm sure a long time ago, on the weekends they just left you alone.
Right.
It's no longer the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's so that's one set of issues. And the second set of issues is that back in '89, and really until very recently, it was easy to replace a high-cost worker in New York with a low-cost worker in Mumbai or Beijing or
Sure.
Shanghai or
Outsourcing.
somewhere. But where we are today is that all human labor is under threat. Whether
Yes.
you're in China, in India, or some Ethiopia or whatever else, the game has been for several years now to figure out how to do all that is done without humans.
Yes.
And so, when you think about that for a second, suddenly the people in China, the leadership of China can't say, for the next several centuries, we're going to be on this gravy train where General Motors is simply going to move their assembly or their manufacturing to China. That's not going to happen. If anything, it's going to be the reverse. That the people who manufacture these products are going to say, now wait a minute, why have a complex supply chain? Why take, if we're serving the American market, that today is still the biggest market, unified market in the world, why do we want to make bits and pieces of a car, ship some to India, some to China, some somewhere else, have them then come back into the States, assemble, to be sold to them? Well, why don't we just do it all inside the United States?
Sure. Well, also you have to address the issue of automated manufacturing. Another issue I address in my book is that the future of manufacturing, human beings are going to become meaningless. They're going to be replaced by robots. Even when it comes to truck driving, you're going to have autonomous vehicles in the future. You don't even need truck drivers anymore. You're going to have the trucks being driven by themselves. You're going to have that kind of future. So in that situation, even China is struggling with it, because you're going to have hundreds of millions of people who've had jobs in factories and as truck drivers, and then suddenly they're not needed.
Right.
So how do we address that? And this is going to be the great struggle, because even education will be not good enough. Just because you're a thinker, well, what else can you do so that everyone can be fully employed?
Right.
And it's going to be a major issue and a major challenge to address in the years to come.
Yeah. Now, is this your new car, Jason?
No, that's Elon Musk's new car. That's the Tesla Cybertruck, Charles. We're talking about cars driving themselves. I'm trying to do, stream of consciousness graphics support here. So that's what
well done.
He does have a factory in Shanghai.
Right.
Yes. So it may have been made in Shanghai.
And I also found out that Tesla purchased a company, a battery making company called Maxwell. I was quite surprised to learn that. I don't think it's connected at all to what's her name, Maxwell. But they're making batteries.
Good. Well, if we could just jump back to the slide for a second.
Okay.
Sure.
So today is not just because you're here, Tom, but today is a pretty significant day, because by tomorrow we're going to know what's in this Horowitz report. We're going to know if it's a dud or not. We're going to know. Hopefully, we're going to be surprised. We're going to find out things we don't know. But a lot is going to change once that report hits the ground. It's either going to be not all that compelling, and we're going to not sign off on it and say, oh no, here's another case of the deep state getting to a report that was originally published months ago and now turning it into drivel. Or alternatively, we're going to look at this thing and say, wait a minute, this is a lot. This confirms our worst fears, and it's maybe even worse than we thought. So a lot of stuff's going to change, and a lot of the focus will be on this Horowitz report. At the same time, what the Democrats are trying to do with impeachment. So
I'm sure they came up with something.
Yeah, let's hope. Tomorrow, let's hope. Let's hope. But when we think about this, Jason, is Trump 72 or 73? I think he's 73.
72, because he was 71. Maybe he's 73. I think he was 70, or I don't know. Let's look it up.
I think he's
over 70.
He's over 70 in any case. So here's a gentleman who's over 70 years old.
Are you suggesting he should fight Joe Biden?
That's with one hand behind
his back. You can do more push-ups.
Push-ups, right?
Yeah.
That's right. Call people fat.
That's right. Listen, fat.
It's crazy.
I think, you think about this man who obviously
73.
wanted the job.
73.
So he wanted the job. He ran for the job. I mean, he hasn't had to work, for decades. He had enough money to just not work and live a pretty high life. So
who knows anything about that, Charles?
I don't know what you're talking about, Jason.
Well, it wouldn't be me.
No, I retired in 2002. But the point is that if you don't have to work, then why in the hell at age 73 would you do this?
Sure.
Take all these incoming missiles, fight all these battles if it's not, it's not just the Chinese trade war. He's
Yeah.
fighting with Iran, he's fighting with Venezuela, he's fighting Democrats, he's fighting, you name it. He's fighting Europe.
Yeah.
And I think he's doing it for excellent reasons. Sure. I think he's doing it because America has been in a structural disadvantage because of these criminal elites who've been feasting off the carcass of American greatness for too long. And I think he's just said, look, I'm going to make my mark on history.
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. So this will be a key moment tomorrow to watch. And the people who are cheering Trump on to be defeated are people who are basically fundamentally stupid. In my opinion. I mean, not that I have a strong
and corrupt, right?
And corrupt as hell. They're trying to make sure that the truth does not come out.
Do you think that the media tomorrow is going to suppress the news, or are they going to be able to?
I don't.
The pro-Democrat media.
They're going to certainly try to shape the news to make it seem like whatever comes out in the Horowitz report proves that they're
the Democrats were correct.
That the Democrats, there's Trump is exaggerating, and now we need to impeach even more quickly.
Sure.
I mean, whatever it says, they're going to come out and try to make their case.
Just got to impeach him more.
Of course.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Further evidence.
But why don't for the new viewers, and this is the part where we have to just help our new viewers understand how we do this show. Maybe we should go to the next slide. This is a different sort of a process. This is not, it's a discussion of the three of us, but it's not us laying the law down for the audience. This is giving people in Jason's growing subscriber group. I guess you're up to what now? 85,000, Jason?
89,000.
89. My goodness.
It's an interesting point, though, because we were discussing my concerns about the growth of 4,000 additional subscribers in less than a month. It has basically the day after I mentioned that on David Hawkins' show. It's sort of stopped dead, and it's been hovering around 89,300 since I made mention of it. So I don't know what that means, but if anybody starts accusing me of buying subscribers.
You're really bad at that. You're as bad at buying subscribers as Hillary Clinton was rigging elections. But anyway, so what we try to do here in the show, and in Jason's other shows as well, is we are trying to engage the audience of people around the world. We do now have an international audience who are sick of fake news. They're sick of being lied to, and we're trying to feed up a steady diet of information that is backed up by links and backed up by sources that people can read on their own time and think about on their own time. And if they like what they hear and see, we encourage our viewers, first of all, to contact us so we know what you think. You can do that on my site. You can do that my Twitter and Jason's Twitter. I don't know if you want to mention your Twitter.
Yeah, it's at TMC. You can type it up, at TMC.
Well, you can't do it.
Oh, he can't do it.
No,
at TMC Gregor China, at TMC GREGORCHINA.
Okay.
If you can put that up, that would be very nice.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just recently wrote about India. That was
Where's that?
India? Well, they're neighbors, actually, with China.
I've heard about indoor China. Is that similar to outdoor China?
Outdoor, yeah.
But people can follow Tom at TMC Gregor China.
Yeah.
There you go, Tom McGregor.
We have to get your followers up.
Yeah, I know. I'm not doing too well on the followers.
But it's interesting you're followed by Katika.
Oh yeah, she's one of my really good friends. We chat almost every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's very smart.
Oh, Katika. Yeah, Ekaterina is the one I chat with.
Yeah,
She's
Katya
great.
as well.
She does great interviews. Always
does.
asks great questions.
She does. I try to keep up. I try to answer her questions. I'm not sure I ever do, but
Katika was one of my first followers. I was very surprised because she had so many followers. Yeah.
Good. So what we try to do is then we encourage people to contact us. We encourage people to go and really go over these links.
Sure.
We cannot check every link that we look at to the level of are we sure that this person actually wrote this or whatever. But we could test for the integrity of the thought behind it, and we can cross-check it against other sources, and we do that. And we encourage our viewership to do that.
Open sourcing news.
Exactly. Well, crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea. Crowdsource the truth. That's Jason's brainchild. and it was a very smart one. It is a very smart one. So one of the things that Jason does is great is we have all of our shows. This is our 193rd episode we're doing right now, but they're all in one handy dandy place here in the playlist. And maybe, Jason, you could explain how to get the...
Sure. People can find the playlist on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel. We've got every one of the episodes of Sunday with Charles, and Charles Ortel is closing in. A lot of people ask us, Charles, how they can access the presentation. Almost every single one of the videos contains a a PDF presentation created by Charles. And when you arrive at the individual video that you're interested in, if you look in the description box below the video, click on this show more thing, there's always going to be a link in there that says download Charles's presentation. And if it's not there, you can send me an angry email, as people have in the past. But you just click on that link and it's going to bring you right to the PDF document. There is a very handy little download icon in the upper right hand corner, and if you click on that, it will download it to your local computer where you can print it out, read along as you follow the video, wallpaper your house with all of these.
That's right.
Hand them out on the streets, whatever you might choose to do. It's almost like silly putty. There's an unlimited number of uses, Charles.
That's great stuff.
Even I can understand it.
And so, yeah, the other thing I think we should mention, because we should give credit to where credit is due here. We like to get constructive comments, and we also don't mind getting presents. And we got, we got this wonderful, Mr. Bill, is this?
Yeah, that's Mr. Bill.
Mr. Bill to go with our video.
Fantastic.
Mrs. Bill.
That remains incredibly suppressed.
That remain, along with many other things that remain incredibly suppressed.
Yeah.
So. Here, Mr. Bill, I hope you don't fall off, but...
Yeah, I had him sort of jammed in there in a specific way.
There we go.
Oh, okay.
He's
You
fighting...
get the art department back in. You get the set decoration department
Yeah,
back
we get
in.
the set... Yeah, that's right. Key grip.
Right. You get the Mr. Bill grip.
Yeah, so with that, we like to begin each presentation with a review of the things that we think are most interesting.
Okay.
And so this Horowitz report, we've been talking about it, I think that it's likely. I mean, they've hyped it so much, saying it's going to be lengthy. They interviewed a lot of witnesses. They said there's not much of it's going to be redacted. They said that there could be appendices. And we have so many other things that are out there in the public domain that, for certain, whether they had intended to or not, I think we're going to find.
You're going to feel disappointed?
No, I think we're going to find information that's interesting. It's going to expand.
Okay.
It's going to help, see more of the landscape here of what was going on. We're going to have more dates. We're going to be able to expand the chronology. We're going to be able to find conflict or.
But by overhyping, maybe it's leading to high expectations, and so it's possible they might be disappointed.
Yeah, I think on the left they've been trying to sell that this is going to exonerate everybody, the Obama administration, and on the right, the Hannitys of this world have been saying tick tock, it's going to be gigantic, and Joe Genovese said it's going to be gigantic. I kind of think it's either going to be a report that we'll look at and say that it pulls punches. It didn't go as far as it should have. There's an excellent summary here. This conservative treehouse. I don't know if you ever.
Yes, I quoted it extensively in my book.
Good.
Conservative treehouse. Yeah.
So conservative treehouse is calling attention in this latest blog entry that what they fear may happen is that Horowitz will do what he's done in some of the other reports and say, look, yes, there is evidence of wrongdoing, but nobody intended to commit wrongdoing, and therefore it's not a crime.
Well, there's your pattern or behavior.
Well, but putting into a statute a requirement for intent, for example, where there is no such standard in the mishandling. And I certainly hope that does not happen. Because if yet again, with so much scrutiny now on Horowitz, with a real Attorney General and Barr, I don't want to see another nothing burger. You're preparing the nothing burger?
I'm prepared for a nothing burger too.
Yeah, I'm
I
preparing.
had seen the disasters of Jeff Sessions and his poor performance as Attorney General. So I've come to the realization that deep state knows how to do a lot to prevent Trump from trying to clean house.
Well,
it's very frustrating.
Will notice there's plenty of room at the table for Inspector General Horowitz to join.
I'm sure he'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah,
let's hope not.
As he dines on a nothing burger there, Charles.
Let's hope not.
There's a lot of stuff going on today. It's interesting. You add elements and it adds stuff.
Yeah. So there's a story here where Trump and Giuliani is saying, Trump is saying that Giuliani will have a lot of information on Ukraine. And
I'm more interested about that, actually.
And I think when we talk about Ukraine, and even when we talk about Russia to a certain extent, when we talk about China,
sure.
What we should be talking about is the business model for corruption and fraud involving political cronies and political actors. And the business model is very simple. You assert that a given function can only be done by a company that has ties to a state.
Sure.
Right? And if, in the case of the former Soviet Union, you had a lot of these companies that were owned by the state, in the case of Western Europe, same story, and to a lesser degree here in the United States, what you do is you get a bunch of politically connected hacks together, and you get a law firm, a crooked law firm and an accounting firm to organize, in a bank, to organize an auction for that asset.
Sure.
And magically, your team that's grifting on the politicians, you get to buy something for $400 million that's really worth $2 billion.
And the Ukraine were very expert at playing those games.
Ukraine, across the former Central Europe, across the former Soviet Union, across Western Europe.
Didn't Bill Browder purchase the bank was auctioning off Lucas Oil or something like that?
Yeah, I mean that was the game.
They bought the bank.
Yeah, you would go and you
control the auction.
Right, exactly. You do.
Like, any other bids? Any other bids?
Yeah, Putin put a stop to all that.
Yeah,
and that's why they don't like him.
Who put a
Putin, he put a stop to all that. Yeah. So when you're fighting, when you're a real reformist like Trump or Putin, and I'll even put down Xi Jinping, who cracked down on corruption, when you're a real reformist, the deep state, the corrupt people, will not like you.
Right.
You become enemy number one.
But I think in what Trump is saying about Giuliani, and we'll have some more details about Ukraine after we talk about your book. But I think there will be a tremendous amount of information that will come out here that is going to implicate people like John Kerry and his son. It's going to implicate Nancy Pelosi and her son. It's going to implicate a lot of people, because the way the game is played in the center of the swamp here in New York, which finances the swamp, and DC, which is the swamp. Yeah. The way the game is played is you have a politician who has family members, and those family members are married or in relationships or whatever else. And unless you know all of these little strands, you're not going to immediately see how John Kerry, who's managed to marry well twice,
billionaires, right?
One was worth a couple hundred, and the second was a billionaire. Yeah. He knows how to do that. He doesn't know how to do much else.
I can't even find a woman with a job.
Count yourself lucky. So anyway, we're going to find out a lot more, I think, through the revelations in Ukraine about just how deep this corruption and fraud was, using charities as conduits to funnel bribes to politicians. Now, Jason, I don't know, and Tom, I don't know if you followed this news about Ericsson, but did you see that Ericsson got off light?
A couple billion, right?
Only $1 billion, which that sounds like I'm being crazy, but Ericsson's a gigantic company. That they would be let off with only having to pay $1 billion fine.
Now, weren't they major donors to the Clinton Foundation?
Absolutely. They said.
Yes, I am familiar with that. I had done some research on that a few years ago. Yeah. Someone asked me about Ericsson and to check into them, and I did.
Yeah, so Ericsson, I know them reasonably well, and the family that controls Ericsson, it's a public company, but the biggest family in it is the Wallenberg family.
Okay.
And Ericsson and Nokia back at the end of the 1990s timeframe, they were high atop the food chain along with Motorola.
Top mobile company.
Yeah, and now, they're sort of has-beens.
I think the mobile phone division got sold to Microsoft, didn't it?
Was
or
that
Sony?
was that Nokia or Ericsson? I forget which.
think
That might have been
Sony-
Which one,
Ericsson.
Nokia or
Yeah,
Ericsson?
I'm pretty sure
It
I
might
had
have
a
been.
phone that was a Sony Ericsson phone.
You're right.
I think so.
And so here the issue was, to your point about didn't they have a tie to the Clinton Foundation, when Hillary was Secretary of State, Ericsson was in trouble because they were trying to do business in Iran.
Oh, okay.
And so they needed a way, we were getting tough on Iran and
Yes.
sanction busting and stuff like that. And so the Clinton Foundation arranged to have a satellite thing, just like the Canadian one, set up in Sweden
Okay.
and funneled more than $20 million through that satellite, that subsidiary, to the Clinton Foundation.
Yes.
We don't know how much they really raised in that Swedish thing. We don't know how much that actually went to the foundation.
Sure.
But we do know that Bill Clinton was paid substantial sums to speak
Yes.
by Ericsson. And none of that was supposed to have happened without prior approval, which apparently was not procured in the way that
Mm-hmm. Because
it should
she
have been.
was Secretary of State at the time, right?
And they had an arrangement that they were supposed to follow, which they did not follow. So, but here comes the news that Ericsson has had, there's a criminal trial here, or a criminal process, and stuff has now happened, which means there's a record, which means that if we do want to get serious about draining the swamp, we don't just take this at face value. We say, okay, thank you for agreeing that you did a whole bunch of stuff bad. Now, did this process here get into a deep dive of the Clinton Foundation and
Yes.
its relationships? And if it did not, why didn't it? If it did, what papers do you have, and let's see them.
Of course.
So this is a good development, I think, that it's made it this far.
Interesting. They're talking about China in here with Ericsson as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have some business I'm aware of.
Now the next thing that's interesting, Jason, is have we talked at all about the Gates Foundation in these shows?
I'm
I'm
curious. What do you know about the Gates Foundation?
Well, we've done quite a few shows on the Gates
okay.
Foundation,
Okay.
and so the Gates Foundation, my working theory on it is that Bill Gates was under enormous pressure in the 90s because he was so rich and he hadn't given that much money
Sure.
away, and he was under antitrust investigation under Clinton, and then he could have been under antitrust investigation by the EU. So I think he was dragged kicking and screaming to set up this foundation. And he realized that it actually was a pretty sweet deal. There's no state income tax
On these NGOs, yeah.
Well, no, in Washington State.
Okay.
There's no state income tax. So you're just talking about federal income tax.
Wow.
He has tens of billions of dollars of Microsoft stock, or he had tens of billions. I don't know how much he has now. When you're a really rich guy like him, you can take your stock that you might have spent, less than a penny per share
Yeah.
on. You then give it to a foundation you control. And you could
Wow.
take a tax deduction equal to the value. You used to be able to take a tax deduction equal to the value of the stock on the date of grant, not at cost.
Same thing Mark Zuckerberg is doing at Facebook.
Right. So Gates has been doing that for a while, with the rub being that the Gates Foundation is really controlled by Bill, Melinda Gates, and Warren Buffett, another big
Yeah.
contributor. So I have been arguing on these shows with Jason that there ought to be reform of that. You shouldn't be able to take a tax deduction for transferring paper
Your wealth.
from one pocket to another one of your pockets, still controlling the paper.
Exactly.
You shouldn't be
I
allowed to
agree.
do that. But they have been allowed to do that. And Jason, what this article says is that the CEO of the Gates Foundation has just agreed to step down,
Yeah.
quote, for health reasons.
Right.
Right.
Not
Meaning,
for
like,
family
if you
reasons?
They don't for family reasons. It is for family.
Very bad for your health if you don't leave.
Exactly. But she's typically got one of these impeccable resumes of
Sure.
being a great cancer doctor and all this kind of stuff.
She should be testifying in Congress any day now.
Exactly. Exactly. But I think that we've been putting enormous pressure through this show and elsewhere, other means,
okay, that's
to have the Gates Foundation fess up to their crimes, which include characterizing donations to multiple Clinton charities that are not properly organized as donations to public charities, which they're not,
Exactly.
the Clinton Foundation, and paying the price, which is a very high price. I mean, technically speaking, if Donald Trump's people and if the IRS wanted to follow the laws and regulations the way they're written, they could shut the Gates Foundation down, and they could say, look, you guys have never actually discharged your responsibilities lawfully. You made all these erroneous contributions to obvious frauds. This emboldened the fraudsters.
Yeah.
The person who advised the Gates Foundation on its mission originally was so good at his job at McKinsey as managing partner that he went to jail.
I'm familiar with McKinsey. They,
Yeah,
they
Rajat
have some
Gupta.
questionable people working there.
Yeah, well, Rajat Gupta was the first, non-developed country managing partner, and he was sentenced to prison
Yeah.
for insider trading.
Wow.
And there's some serious questions about this McKinsey firm, to the point now. It used to be when you brought McKinsey up, it was, oh, McKinsey, that's Harvard, that's fantastic. Now, Pete Buttigieg, the only business experience he has is 3 years working for McKinsey, and he's trying to claim now that he can't tell us what he did because McKinsey's not going to release him from the confidentiality agreement.
Really?
Yeah, he's seriously trying that on for size. Then we have this story here, which is this classic rubbish that the Dems do. The story in the Hill, where they're trying. Chris Murphy, a guy who obviously he's a
Is
Democrat,
he from Connecticut, right?
Democrat he obviously is on the inside of the Republican Party because he's a hard left Democrat. He's put out the story that there are up to 5 Senate Republicans who might vote to convict Trump. And what is concerning is that just this morning, Lindsey Graham on Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo, and I don't have the clip, said that there's not going to be a trial in the Senate. The way he wants to do it is he let the Democrats come up with their next salvo, then he's going to canvass the Republicans and schedule a vote without giving the president a chance to defend himself, without calling witnesses, and just, if he has 51 votes, he'll vote to acquit Trump, and then we'll just keep going. And if he is that stupid, which he could well be, and maybe that conflicted, which he could well be. There's on my Twitter feed, and I haven't checked it yet, somebody has a picture of Graham and McCain getting an order of something or other from the government of Ukraine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that.
Did you see that?
Interesting.
So maybe Graham has stuff to fear about. If you pull on the Ukraine strings, what's going to come out?
That's the least.
Oh, I know.
We got pictures all day of Lindsey Graham getting awards from Belhaj, the terrorist who has destroyed Libya, and he's there in Libya. Lindsey Graham's having coffee with Stevens a little while before Stevens gets killed and dragged out of the building. I do not trust Lindsey Graham at all.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't either.
You should have put him in a dress.
And what about Romney?
I don't need to put him in a dress. He's doing it himself.
What about Romney?
My
Do you
ex-wife.
think he's going to convince these 5 Republicans?
No. He is my ex-wife's, dearly departed ex-wife's babysitter. And he is
To this day.
so far up his ass.
Yeah.
He's
Mitt
hopeless.
Romney is
Thank God Obama beat him, actually.
catcher's Mitt Romney.
So this is, let's see, this is interesting. We have a Gateway Pundit story. The Gateway Pundit does good work.
Oh, yeah.
actually.
I like it.
Yeah. And this is a contra to the Murphy piece, saying, Trump may just actually say, on second thought, Lindsey and you lightweights who are not prepared to fight, you obviously don't understand what a New York City street fighter is. We're
This is what he should have done the first day, is to basically, have the U.S. Capitol Police drag Adam Schiff out of there in handcuffs for violating the Constitution.
Well, he did.
Well, or something like that,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not a lawyer, but I do think that this is so far away from being what the founders actually intended. I mean, we go back to that for a second. America operated, most people don't remember this, but America did not operate under the Constitution until 1789. It operated under the Articles of Confederation from 1782 to 1789. The Articles of Confederation were a lot like the EU. They were weak, there was no strong executive by design. But if you scroll back to 1782, so before the Constitution, every single person who rose up to shake off the control of the king was breaking real serious laws in the UK, the punishment for which was brutal execution and removing the ability for all descendants of the people involved from holding any type of property. So not only would you be killed in a way that ensured you could not go to heaven, but you would be disinheriting your entire family, and your property would revert to the king.
Wow.
That's the system they were operating under. And to suggest that these people who shook off that in a revolution which cost a lot of lives, particularly in percentage term based on the number of people who were there back then, a bloody revolution, you shake that off, and 7 years later you sign up with the Constitution because the articles didn't work, and you think that they seriously believed back then that you could remove a president who had been elected under the word by following the word of a whistleblower whose name we don't know, who's never been stress tested, in a process where the accused had no right to defend himself, no due process for something that isn't even a crime. I mean, any single person who makes that argument should have their law licenses suspended, should be removed from office, because they're basically stone cold stuck on stupid. This is the Ukraine thing, I think, with...
Yeah, well, and it's like you've heard of hooked on phonics. This is stuck on stupid.
Right, yeah.
Oh, he's the candy tycoon, right?
This guy's the president.
The president.
Yeah, but he was the candy tycoon. That's how he made his fortune.
Yeah, look at the people who were getting the honors. Here you have McCain.
Yeah.
Thankfully, he's still dead. And who's next to him?
Who is it, Graham?
I think it's Klobuchar.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's Graham. Yeah, we don't want a trial and bring witnesses having to do anything with Ukraine, because maybe something concerning Lindsey Graham might come
So
up.
that's Poroshenko, right?
Right.
Poroshenko, yes.
Oh, look, and there's Maria Yanovovich, or whatever her name is.
But who's over there? Is
that Dennis, the guy who likes what's the guy's name who likes the London School of Economics?
Dennis Cheng?
Was that him? It's a Maserati, very nice.
So that's Yovanovitch. There's Graham. There's McCain. And I don't know. There's the president. It looks like Macron, but I don't think that was Macron.
We might get in trouble for showing too much of the clip.
All right. Well, let's keep going then.
Yeah.
Let's analyze it.
That's what we were doing, but I don't know. We'll see. Sometimes they automatically ding stuff.
That you captured Lindsay. That's a very good photo of Lindsay. I like that photo.
He's just sort of looking.
Opie?
He does not look very happy there.
Yeah.
Well,
and
it's like he knows I got caught, and he's not happy about that.
He's like, oh, there's a camera there.
Yeah. I didn't know cameras were going to be here.
I was not told
McCain,
this would be
how come you didn't tell me
publicized.
this?
Yeah.
Thinking.
Yeah. So, let's just see. There's this is already dated, but when I put the slide together earlier today, we didn't know the extent of the Saudi. This is diabolical. I'm sorry.
Terrorism.
Yeah, but this is diabolical, because I mean, this is the Saudi Air Force had obviously recommended and vouched for these people. So who did that? How deep does this thing go? And what's breaking news after this story came out is there are now missing Saudi nationals. They're hunting all over the country trying to find out what they're going to do next. And this team that was involved in this was here, Jason, earlier this week at the tree lighting ceremony.
What?
Yeah. This is,
Really?
I mean, this is a much deeper...
What were they doing here?
Well, I don't think it was to get the best deal possible with,
TKTS?
Exactly. I mean,
I don't think they care about Christmas either, Charles. I need to check my Wahhabist handbook. But
People may need to stay away from that Christmas tree now that I think about it.
Oh,
Right.
That's what they're probably wanting people to think. But this ties into a lot of the research that John Cullen has done with the Las Vegas shooting. He's presented a ton of evidence that actually there was a report just released from Carnegie Mellon University. They've developed a software algorithm that corroborates a lot of the things that John Cullen has been saying as far as the locations of the shooters in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Shooters, you said plural, so you think there was more than one guy?
I think that people should become sponsors of patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and watch the extensive footage and coverage that John Cullen has done. Yes, many more than one shooter.
Very interesting.
No broken window in the hotel room where Stephen Paddock was dead until after he was dead. That's from police body camera footage.
Yeah.
So that pesky little thing called evidence.
Evidence?
The FBI hates it.
That is so 2018.
Yeah.
1989, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. At least before Vince Foster was around.
So I just did, let's see, what do we have? Yeah, we skipped, no we didn't. I have had personal experience a year ago being on the receiving end of the mainstream media trying to make the argument that I was the person who financed Peter Smith and I was the conduit to Julian Assange. And so I had to endure endless inquisitions by every single media outlet.
Sure.
And I each time I said, you really should cover a real charity fraud, a laundromat. Instead of doing that, here's the story that came out yesterday.
I was going to say, is this the right article? That
It is.
Is this an anti-Kentucky Fried Chicken article?
No, this is. I mean, this is the kind of drivel they put out instead of it actually doing real work.
Sure.
On the Clinton Foundation, which I think is fraud with all its tentacles in the hundreds of billions of dollars. You're going to interrupt the news flow on whatever day this was to talk about Trump.
Flow.
Trump is an idiot because he's saying that the low pressure toilets and low pressure showers just cause you to flush the toilet more and to stay in the shower longer, which actually
might be true.
Is most likely true. And I guess this story makes Mike Bloomberg look stupid as well. With his big gulp approach, he tried to
the anti-sugar guy, right?
Well, he failed to remember that when you go into a soup, just because you say that one soda, you restrict the size.
You could buy more than one.
It doesn't mean that you're only. That means I'll only buy one small.
Sure,
you're going to buy
course.
10 small ones.
Yeah.
So. Now, Jason and I have talked at length about this art world and how it's one of the last remaining ways to launder money. But did you see this story, Jason?
Was it
the
Art
banana
Basel?
story?
Madonna's daughter in an orgy?
No, this guy, Inigo, who's got a crazy name. It's like Inigo Philbrick or something like that.
Like Italian
and
or something?
there's an art finance firm backed by who, Jason?
George Soros.
Right. And so this guy has come along. This is the oldest trick in the book in financial fraud. It's all over the world you do this. You take an asset, you say, you probably aren't going to believe this, but this Mr. Bill plush toy, there's only one of them in the world, and it's worth
priceless.
$16 billion.
So
I'll tell you what, because I like you, I've just met you for the first time, I'll let you buy it for $16 million, and Jason will give you the $16 million. Would you like that?
I see.
And of course you'll say, forget that, I'm not buying a plush toy for $16 million, I'm not buying it for $16. But what the hell, in the art world, it has become quite commonplace to say that, the plush toy is worth whatever, and you get some supposed expert over here who says, I think it's worth twice that, but you're getting a bargain.
Sure.
And anyway, that's what this young kid did. And it turns out he has now disappeared, and people all over the world are saying, I thought I was the one who bought this plush toy, and somebody else, I took out $70 million loan to buy.
That's got to be worth billions.
This is obviously worth.
And this is his
not
art.
third grade finger painting?
I know.
I think my son can draw the same picture.
That is bad. That's really bad.
But that's what they've been doing. So this is bad. Go to the next link. It gets worse. In the next link in the slide. It gets even worse. I don't know if you've heard the latest on this one. Somebody sold a banana duct taped to a canvas, but it gets worse.
Somebody ate it.
And then somebody else ate it.
Art world stunned after a man eats the $120,000 banana. I was not stunned at all. Frankly, that is the funniest, like Banksy-esque.
Right.
I love it. They just taped the $120,000. I mean, you know what? I'll tell you what, this is way more interesting to me than the finger painting because this is challenging the art world by its very existence.
Right.
It's Warhol-esque in that regard.
Right. I mean, it's funny, when I was down on vacation, there were quite a few noteworthy art collectors who really take it seriously and are responsible. And we were talking about this whole kind of thing. And people back in the 70s, 60s, when you looked at the work that was coming out at that time, people looked at this is garbage. I mean, this is nothing compared to, and now those paintings are trading $50 million each, $60 million each.
We've got to read this, Charles. Then on Saturday at around 1:45 p.m., the art world was shocked when a random man, allegedly a performance artist, ate said duct-taped banana that sold earlier this week for $120,000. Now, the takeaway from this is that if you pay $120,000 for a banana taped to anything other than, say, $119,999 in cash, you're an idiot who deserves to have his banana eaten.
Yeah, but you know what's going to happen now? I was watching, because there's not much to watch, I was watching MSNBC, and there's some new play, and the new playwright, it's about, I don't remember the name of the play, but it's about the degree to which American society is a product of chattel slavery, and it's a highly sexualized treatment of this. And here's this playwright he's dressed like a clown, with a strange hat and color coordinated weird clothes.
Well, that's normal. He probably just came from transgender story time.
No, it was a straight guy, with a weird hat and strange colored clothes and shoes and socks and all this kind of stuff, and talking like this about his play, and adoring a New York Times columnist saying, "Oh yes, I went to your play. It was fantastic. It was groundbreaking. It's revolutionary." It's drivel. Anyway, on a more serious note, now we'll transition to your work. Here's a recent story in Hong Kong about the protests there. The one below that, Jason. Sorry.
Okay.
They are now saying that the protests in this zero hedge, which I find zero hedge to be pretty good.
Sure.
800,000 marching in Hong Kong.
Okay.
Wow. Now, I've been to Hong Kong probably not as many times as you have, but I've been quite a few times.
Sure.
And to see it get to this place.
There wasn't even a new iPhone released that day.
No, it tells me that this is not going to be like Tiananmen Square.
No, it won't be.
And so I'm just curious what you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to know, because this is recent news. Was this peaceful?
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
the story came out at it says what the time 10:15 today in the morning.
Okay,
So
because they happen so often that it's almost like old news to me.
So it's
nowadays.
semi peaceful.
So there was some violence.
That means people getting their ropes cracked.
Yeah, there's people who are they haven't been killed, but they're getting wounded pretty bad. Well, the fact is there is a lot of violence happening in Hong Kong, and they say that the police are being brutal, but the facts are, if you look at the videos that's on the social media, and I've seen them, they're horrifying. It's very shocking. They will go up and gang up old women, old men, and they'll just beat them really bad.
When you say they, you mean the protesters? Or
Protesters.
Oh.
It's really shocking.
Why are the protesters beating old men and women?
And that's what the media in the Western media is not talking about. There's so many of these videos. What they'll do is they'll go to taxi drivers. They'll pull them out of the taxi. They'll have like 20 different guys gang up on the guy, start beating him on the ground, throw him. They'll kick him. They're all bloody.
But why do the protesters care about taxi drivers? I thought they're trying to
Because in their mind,
globalists.
the taxi drivers were driving past some barricades they set up. But sometimes the taxi drivers didn't know about the barricades. They just happened to drive in that area. They wanted to turn around, and then they get surrounded.
Sounds like Chinese Antifa. Are we sure these guys
Yes.
aren't agitators?
They
who
are
placed in
Antifa.
there to
They even look like
enable the
Antifa.
cops to beat everybody
And
up?
they look like Antifa. Just look at their mask. Look at the stuff they're wearing. They're wearing all black. They're in full mask. This is Antifa Hong Kong version.
So is it possible that those people are put there to agitate, to give the police an excuse to shoot and beat up every protester?
From my understanding, yes. But the thing is, and that's why the police have been trying to restrain and avoid that, because they know that if they start killing people, there's going to be major problems from different governments. So they're doing their best to try to be restrained. So only when the police officers feel like his life is in danger will he shoot. And that is actually rare instances. Like one time they had one cop, and you saw the video, I saw the video, the full video, and they were attacking. They were charging up. They had these sticks, what they have with these sticks is they have these metal swords. They're carrying swords, but it's covered by this bamboo stuff. So everyone thinks, oh, they're just hitting them with sticks. But in reality, it's swords. So they try to stab him. There was a police officer who was stabbed in the neck.
Oh.
He was just walking by. He got stabbed in the neck. But the Western media is not talking about the violence. They're describing these people as peaceful protesters. They are not.
Yeah. Well, whether whether they're chiefly peaceful or chiefly violent or whatever, the fact that 800,000 people are out in the streets again just says that there's a serious problem.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
Yeah. And I can address that. Well, the Hong Kong people are by nature anti-mainland China. So recently they've had elections, and despite all the violence that occurred, most of the voters in Hong Kong voted for candidates who were anti-Beijing. But that was to be expected. Hong Kong people, most of them are very anti-Chinese. But at the same time, you have a one country, two systems. Okay? So China is just going to have Hong Kong as its territory. But Hong Kong people want to do this independence. It's not going to happen. Because to do the independence for the Chinese, you got to remember face issues. They have this territory. It's theirs. The British handed it over, and they handed it over peacefully. And they're going to hold on to it. It's like, just imagine if Hawaii wanted to declare its independence. Do you think Washington's going to support that?
We wouldn't give them Hawaii. We'd probably give them New Jersey.
Well, but the facts are is that it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in China.
Well, so my perspective on it, for what it's worth, is that I think, and we'll get into this in a second, I think that in China, to get to the next level of development, China is going to have a more reliable capital base.
And they will.
Well, they've got a lot of work to do, and this is a slide that takes you through some of this. Now, what I did here, Tom, is I took data. These are all estimates, and I'm happy to get, if there's another system out there that does this on reliably for every country in the world, translated into dollars, let's use that one. But this is UNCTAD data.
Okay.
Right? Now, most people, even people who call themselves economists, leaving aside Professor Gruber, who's an idiot, the guy behind Obamacare. Okay. Most people, when they think, even myself, when I retired in 2002, I said, well, I want to get smart on economics. How do you measure economic growth?
Sure.
And the answer always comes back GDP, gross domestic product. That's what you should look at. So I thought, I've been thinking about that for a long time, and I don't think that answer is correct. I think that the right way to look at it is to look at components of GDP. So household consumption is what people buy, what they consume each year. What everybody in America, everybody in China, what they spend money on. The reason that's an interesting figure, in this country, it's estimated that as many as 90% of the population simply spends what they make.
Yes.
They have no savings.
Yes.
They just they may spend more than they make.
Sure.
But so this is the life of the average American is consumption. Mm-hmm. In addition, unbeknownst to the average American or Chinese person, there's capital formation. You're out there investing. The average American doesn't know exactly why Jason Goodman is investing in Crowdsource the Truth, or Charles Ortel is investing in his tennis lessons, or you're investing.
GE.
Not definitely in GE, but so this figure of capital formation, though, if you've been around the business world, we say this, but for your benefit, if I walked into Jason and said, Jason, your company is great, what you really need to do is you need to take $15 million and buy this plush toy over here.
I already got one, Charles.
Because with the plush toy, that's going to be your signature. And, I start giving you this cockamamie argument about investing. People fight in the business, literally, not physically fight, but they get into heated discussions over weeks and months and years about should we put this plant there, should we do this, whatever. And so the sums that are shown here in capital formation, at least in the private sector side of it, are chiefly fought over and thought through, and people have a rationale for why they want to do it. It may work out, it may not work out.
Sure.
But there's some logic to it. Now, the problem with capital formation, the numbers in the UNCTAD database, this includes private capital formation and government. Okay. Government capital formation, it could be total rubbish. It could be, Barack Obama wants a library in Chicago, and so we'll just give him $500 million because he was the first African American. So that number, but these two numbers are the driving force behind economic growth. The question of exports and imports. Exports and imports are basically counted inside these numbers.
Okay.
Right? Because household consumption includes stuff that you have imported into your country, and capital formation figures include tractors or planes or whatever. So leave the question of exports and imports aside for a moment, and then let's look at the trend in household consumption. Let's compare it year by year. In China, for 1.4 billion people today, it was 1.3 trillion. In America in 2007, 9.8 trillion.
Okay.
And that's then capital formation. For some reason in China, people spent more on capital than they consumed.
Yeah.
Right?
What do you mean spent more on capital?
In other words, the amount spent in China for putting up factories and building dams and roads or whatever.
That's considered capital?
That's capital formation. That amount exceeded the total consumption of all Chinese people in a year. Whereas in the US, the amount that we spent was 33% of total consumption. Right? And why is this interesting? 2007, China had not just started down its path of modernization.
Sure.
That path began by 1989-90. These capital projects, most of these investments have a life maybe 7 to 10 years, maybe longer, because technology is moving so quickly, and you put something.
A road or a factory?
Well, a factory may or may not have a long life. You may have to redo the machinery. Like a chip fab is 18 months.
Wow.
At Intel. So I'm not saying I know exactly how long it is, but you look at this trend, and some numbers that really leap out. For China, so the entire period, 2007 to 2017. Their capital spending was 117% of consumption in a period where consumption went from 1.3 trillion up to 4.7 trillion.
I believe it.
Right? Whereas we declined from 33% down to 30.
Yep.
Now, you look at these numbers, and I'm going to rip on AOC here for a while. I mean, when you're trying to come up with a grand plan for the United States, or for China for that matter, I don't think what you do in Beijing is you say, you know what, get me the best former bartender you can find. And then we're going to come up with this Green New Deal, and let this idiot say, the United States needs to drop everything and spend $93 trillion on the Green New Deal.
Sure.
Right?
It's the Red New Deal.
If we go back into the table, you'll see that for the 11-year period, in the United States, the total amount of money that we spent in the United States over 11 years was 36 trillion. In China, they spent 39 trillion. So our two countries together in 11 years, the 11 years where the world is going to disappear if we don't do something about it, did not spend more than $76 trillion. And this bartender, former bartender, says that's not good enough. For the Green New Deal, which nobody even knows what that is, you should give me $93 trillion.
You take a boat to the moon, Charles.
I know, I do that every morning. I just got back. But anyway, so you look at these numbers, and let's assume that China is sizing its factories to dominate the world.
Okay.
And let's assume that the United States is doing the same thing.
Sure.
Right? Why are we spending only 29% of our consumption on capital expenditure, whereas China is spending 117? Either we're really short-sighted and missing something, which I don't think we are, or there's a massive bubble in China. Which I think
I'm going to address. You were nodding your head yes.
Yeah, I'm a little, because to be honest, I think increasing capital spending is good to invest. I would like to see America do more capital investments, and I see that as a problem. And that actually, to me, shows why China is having a much better economic growth than the American economy is, because they are focusing on investments rather than consumption.
Okay, well, so we'll get into that in a bit. But the point is, if we think through the capital base that we started with in 1989, and the capital base, financial capital, I'm not talking about human capital, I'm not talking about cultural capital, I'm just saying, our balance sheet as a country versus China's balance sheet as a country, right? We were very strong.
Sure.
Okay, we were perhaps the strongest country by far the world's ever seen. You know, there wasn't anyone close. We had that massive amount of capital in 1989. China did not.
Yes.
Okay? So what I think GDP and this type of analysis leaves out is measuring the stock of financial wealth in a country. And if I'm sitting here, we're in a race together, and I've got $1 trillion and you've got $10,000.
Okay.
I'm going to win.
Of course.
Right. I mean, even if I decide to just burn half my money,
Of course.
I'm still going to win.
Yes.
So the point here is that I think, particularly given advances in technology, which has made it possible for Jason, for example, to set this up.
Yeah.
We have a mammoth audience for this show. Well, you couldn't have done this 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
I think even 4 years ago.
Yeah, you couldn't have done
Technology we have today that I didn't even have when we started.
Right.
Yeah.
So you think about that and you say, look, technology is moving ahead so quickly. People are getting comfortable with this kind of a show.
Yes.
And just to pick a narrow thing. And this is happening across the entire American economy, across the Chinese economy. And offsetting that, when you think about investment, if you're sitting there as AOC, you see how quickly the ex-bartender says, I need 93 trillion, and the whole established media says, well, why aren't you spending it? Barack Obama's all in for Greta Thunberg, who hasn't even graduated from high school yet. She's going to remake the world in her image.
Yes.
God help us. And there's a massive danger of calling something an investment that is actually nothing more than a bribe. And in construction projects, as we've demonstrated in the Clinton Foundation, you have these big infrastructure projects, you have lax controls, whatever. I'm just saying here, these numbers, it's not like they go from China 105 to, down to 60 and up to 400. It's not like in America, which, I think at this moment we are number one. Most developed market. It's a tight band, 33 down to 27 to up to 29 on average. I mean, this is something, either these numbers are cooked, which they could be,
By who?
Or, we could have, if you put face issues on the side and just focus on math, as somebody who's a numbers person, I'll tell you, these numbers tell me that there's a clear dissonance here, right?
Yeah.
That needs to be understood. It really needs to be understood, especially, but where I come down on the side of this, probably what we're doing is right, and China has spent too much money on investments that are not going to turn out well, because that did happen in Japan. It has happened in this public sector here in America. I think it's more likely, particularly, in its recent history, I mean, obviously China's history is a lot longer than our history, but in its recent history, 1945 to the present, it's not like China began in 1989 with a whole cadre of people who actually had experience investing in capital projects.
Yeah.
So you would, and frankly, in our big bureaucracies, the General Motors, the GEs, these are cocky people who thought they knew how to do everything right. Look what happened. General Motors went bankrupt. GE nearly went bankrupt. I'm not saying we have all the wisdom in the world in this country. Big bureaucracies make awful capital investment decisions, awful decisions.
Okay.
And these numbers say to me that is what has happened recently, that maybe in the US, maybe we need to invest a little bit more, but certainly in China, there's stuff on the books that ain't worth.
There are some debt issues.
Yeah.
I will agree with you there.
An overvaluation of assets. Okay. So with that in mind, and we had talked, I felt it was okay to do this because we talked previously about this, and you interviewed me, and I expressed this before to you.
Sure.
I thought with this in mind, and also this is interesting here. This is something I don't know if this link up here.
Okay.
I don't know if this is this one here, Jason.
Say open it or don't open it?
Please.
Sorry.
I can't vouch for the whether this is
whether or not SCMP tells accurate information
Right.
about China.
But this is somebody, again, it's just a point of view. It may be wrong, it may be right. But I will say with regard to estimates, GDP in this country, I'll give you a figure I bet you don't know.
Okay.
Maybe you do know.
Well, that's okay. Go ahead.
Consumption, this big number that we have.
Yeah.
What percent of consumption would you guess is an estimate by our accountants of the value that individuals derive by not having to pay rent on the homes that they own. What percentage of this 9.8 trillion or this 13.3 trillion?
This is like the most complicated game show ever.
Well, or make it easy. Do you think it's around?
We need the sound of a ticking clock, and you get shot if the answer is wrong.
No. Do you think it's like 0.1%, 1%?
I'll just throw out a 2%. What's their number?
It's closer to 14%.
Okay, 14%.
What was the question again?
So you own this apartment,
Okay.
right? The Grubers and the accountants around, the Ivy League campuses or whatever, they say, okay, well, Jason's not paying any rent, so he derives a value by not paying rent that we ought to count in consumption, because when we're coming up with this consumption number, it doesn't seem to be big enough. So let's just throw a big ass estimate.
But what about real estate tax that you don't pay?
Again, you're asking pesky questions, and you should be. But it's just rubbish. It's just total rubbish.
Yeah.
Another large number.
Okay.
It's not relative to the size of consumption, but another large number that's thrown in for that is the value of services that you get from your banker that you don't have to pay for.
Oh. Like what? Taking my money?
Exactly, and it's like that number is like 250 billion of this.
What? You don't have to pay for.
So
yeah.
wait, you say, Charles, when you say if these numbers are cooked,
Okay.
this is like slow and low,
Okay.
They're barbecuing these numbers.
I think I know where he's going. Are China's economic numbers for real?
Well, I'm giving you the context of saying America's are not.
Okay.
Right? And so it is highly likely that there's a lot of fluff in everybody's numbers. The question, and the other thing that's not necessarily in these numbers is the value of the off-the-books economy. Right?
There's a lot.
Which we don't know. I mean, we don't know how much of it's in, how much. There certainly isn't a line in the American GDP accounts yet for, hookers and blow.
Sure.
As 1 trillion a year or whatever that number would be. We don't have that number quite yet.
BDK included a whole other
BKB.
report for that. You're right, sorry, BKB.
Yeah. So with this as background, Tom, I'm not trying to make a case that America's numbers are right and China's are wrong.
Okay.
I'm just trying to say we have to tread very carefully, thinking through what any GDP set of accounts. Mind you, GDP, the origin of GDP in the United States dates to about a 1930s memo that was solicited by Franklin Roosevelt's incoming administration, who wanted to have a set of accounts that would justify the public sector getting bigger.
Oh, really?
During the Depression. So there's bias in these accounts.
Sure.
I would argue that you could spend a lot less time in any of this and just count up, try to get a good count, which you could cross-check with your IRS data or the equivalent in China. How much do people earn by way of salary, by way of proprietor's income in a cell phone business, by way of interest and dividends, whatever? How much are we earning, and how much are we spending? That's like interesting stuff. Bearing in mind that there's a gigantic sword of Damocles hanging over workers in China and workers in the United States by machines taking that work away from everybody. So that's where I'd be spending my time, and less on GDP. But with this in mind, I thought we could jump to the next page, Jason.
Yeah.
And
just real quickly, Charles, We Are Awake is watching us on Periscope. Says this is mark-to-market relief. I don't know what that means.
What I'm doing is mark to market?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means, but it sounded important, so I thought I'd
mark to
share it.
market is where you take, maybe he's talking about, mark to market is where you take surface level numbers and you adjust them. You mark them to the real market. And maybe he's saying that this is humorous, what we're doing. But Tom, here's your book. And Jason, if we could put, two different ways to get his book, one off the World Scientific website and one on the Barnes & Noble website. And I don't know which is better for people to use.
I've had some people tell me that they've got it on Amazon and they got it very quickly. But also directly from the publisher has been very good about sending them the books as well.
Yeah. So here it is in a nutshell. But we're in a place where, after a long period of time, where politicians in our country anyway pretended that they were making great progress, pretended that the World Trade Organization made a decision was a genius move, pretended that factories weren't disappearing from this country and workers weren't being hurt. We're in a place, we've been now for many months now, where people around Trump and people around, how do you pronounce it? I don't want to get the name wrong. Xi, right?
Oh, President Xi.
President Xi.
President
Yeah.
Xi.
People around Trump and people around Xi are trying to find some way to come towards a deal.
Yes.
And actually, one of the last times I was on Chinese television, they asked me, was I hopeful for relations between the United States and China? I said, well, there's a simple place where we should be able to make things work.
Sure.
And that's North Korea.
Yes.
And if China and the United States really are serious about being close and fast friends, let's sort out North Korea. We should be able to do that in an instant.
Okay.
Right.
I'd like to address that topic because I've had to talk to many people about this issue of North Korea and its connection to the trade wars. My opinion, and this is just my personal opinion, is get the trade deal done first, and then North Korea will be an easy matter to follow after that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, so I actually think that the trade issues are, in economic terms, far bigger in size than the North Korea.
Yeah.
Because the reason I would say, I would respectfully disagree with you,
Okay.
is that I think in North Korea you have a citizenry that has no recent recollection of hope. It doesn't.
Well, what I'll get to you and what I'm trying to say is based on pure politics, that North Korea has no reason to be motivated to change unless China encourages them to change. And if there is a trade deal, then they will have some motivation to change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I take that point, but my argument is this, that
Okay.
in North Korea you have a large number of people, you have territory, you have no investment to speak
Sure.
of. You have untold riches.
Lots of minerals underground.
A nice
I
seascape.
heard something like it was valued at 8 or 9 trillion.
Yeah. So you have massive, and you have, as Trump was joking, I don't think he was joking actually.
No, he wasn't.
Condos by the beach and all this kind of
No,
stuff.
beautiful area.
In North Korea.
North Korea is actually very beautiful. Trump was correct calling it a beautiful place.
Right.
They have wonderful beaches. They have great for mining, lots of natural resources in North Korea. I heard many South Korean business people tell me that if ever North Korea opens up, they're all moving to North Korea because they're going to start going into the mining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that's North Korea?
Yeah, North Korea. From the South Koreans that I've talked to.
Yeah, but you look at the size of it. First of all, it's pretty big.
Sure.
Where's the best beach? There's probably very, very, very limited.
There's a few, but
Have you been to North Korea?
I have. I've been to the border. I've never crossed. I did see some North Korean troops. That was a time when it was very tense under the Clinton years. From my understanding, right now it's a better situation because of Trump.
Right.
Really?
Yeah. Don't forget what fake news does. Okay. Now North Koreans a little bit upset at Trump, and they're making some, their usual Trump is bad or whatever. What it's basically saying is stop the economic sanctions against North Korea, try to get the trade deal done so that we can have a good future together. North Korea does want a partnership with Trump. Kim Jong-un does have sincere respect for Trump.
Right.
Well, he's the
But
first.
but without the trade deal, it will not happen.
Right. So I'm not a government negotiator, but
Okay.
I am an experienced deal negotiator.
Yes.
I've done a lot of deals all
Sure.
over the world, and what I find with looking at this purely from a deal perspective,
Okay.
not a government, not a foreign
Sure.
relations. In deals, like with managing children, you get to a point where you just basically don't care what
Yeah.
the other side has to say or doesn't say. The question is there going to be a deal or not?
Yeah.
And what are the elements of the deal? What's important to America? What's important
Sure.
to China? What is very important to the United States of America, and in my opinion, is that we cannot have the theft of intellectual property. We just can't have that.
And they put a new law recently.
Well, I'm just saying it has to be enforceable, and it has to be,
January 1st.
Yeah,
January 1st is the beginning of the enforcement.
right. So that's a very important deal.
Yeah.
And I think what should be important for China is to create conditions where people with money would want to park some of their liquid cash in Chinese money market instruments and
And-
Chinese securities, and China
Yeah.
needs capital.
Exactly, and that's what they're doing in Shanghai right now. Part of the advantages of having a U.S.-China trade deal is it forces China to open up its domestic financial markets. So what you will see is Shanghai will replace Hong Kong as the financial capital. And so China really does want a deal. They see the benefits if you do it in the right way. So if you open up and you allow more of the Wall Street banks to move into Shanghai, because right now there's a lot of restrictions.
Right.
But if you open it up, Shanghai is going to replace Hong Kong.
Yeah. So I mean, those are like, I mean, of the big sticking points that I can think. The intellectual theft thing is,
Yes.
is one where, you know, no American president will get elected anymore
And-
under a theory
and-
that you can keep doing this.
And
It's
China
not,
is
you know,
working on that. The new law goes into effect on January 1st. It's fully enforced. And obviously, you're going to have a trade deal where people are going to review it. So if China is not following what the trade terms are, then you're going to have a contract broken. Then it just goes back to trade wars.
Right.
So this is not just a case of, oh, China will just say they're making a law and then they're not serious. Of course they have to enforce it because they know that if they don't, the trade wars return.
Yeah. So this is an excerpt from pages, the end of your book.
Oh, okay.
So just getting to the punchline
Yeah.
at the end of your book, but you know, fair point that, you know, the Chinese are not keen to see a nation 1/4 the size of it in population dictate you're going to do this by
Yeah,
this.
sure,
You
sure.
know, I understand
Yeah.
that.
So you're saying size matters?
In some things.
Yeah.
But equally, you know, from the American perspective, the people who are not the crony capitalists, the people who watched, you know, who were negative on the deal that was struck by Bill Clinton,
Sure.
you know, the counter argument would be, wait a minute, we've had, you know, 30 years of this crap.
Well, that was a bad deal.
Right.
Okay. And my book also explains that. It was a bad deal what the Clintons did. The WTO just gave China a license to just get away with too much.
Right.
They exploited it. But how can you blame them? They were given an opportunity. A government is responsible for its people.
Right.
So if they're going to try to fight for their country's national interest and someone gives them a deal that is to their advantage, why would they say no to that? So what you have right now is Trump dealing with that and say, wait a minute, no more.
Right.
Game over.
Well, so, you know, it could be that that the Clinton era,
Yeah.
that the Clintons become actually radioactive, not simply,
Sure.
they're already radioactive amongst conservatives, but it could be that the Clintons become radioactive for Democrats.
Of course.
And if the Chinese might happen to have evidence that we have not yet seen of corruption involving the Clintons that goes back to Arkansas. Charlie Tree,
Yeah, that was
you know,
Hong Kong.
under the Clinton stuff.
Look to Hong Kong then. There's
Yeah.
a lot going on in Hong Kong.
You know,
what you're talking about.
But if I can finish my thought, I mean,
Okay.
there have to be, you know, and it makes sense to me that China, particularly in that time frame, we're talking 1992 and 3, just the very beginning of the Chinese industrial renaissance or economic renaissance, it would make perfect sense to me if I'm China. Well, this guy Clinton, we know
course.
how crazy he is. I have a story I can't reveal about how crazy Clinton was I won't say what part of around China.
Sure.
He got thrown out of the country for being crazy.
Jack Cashel, in the last interview he did on Crowdsource the Truth, alleged his opinion that China may have been involved in a Clinton conspiracy to handle Ron Brown.
Yeah, I mean, there could be links there. But the point is, if we go back over that history, it's possible that the people we're talking about who may know about this are people that President Xi would like to discipline, you know, or who are gone.
There was a crackdown on corruption.
Right.
He focused on that. See, what the media says about the crackdown on corruption from the Western, he's just punishing his enemies. He's just helping his supporters. That's not true. A lot of the people you just described were sent to prison. And what President Xi called were tiger cages. A lot of these bad guys were wiped out. They sent to prison because of what they did, and with the Clintons, with some of the other governments.
Right.
I mean, these were very dirty people, and President Xi has fought those guys.
And I will say, we haven't really covered it too much in the show, but I'll bring it up now, that the Clinton Foundation got involved in China starting in 2004,
Yeah.
in quotes, fighting HIV/AIDS. Now, the Clinton Foundation.
There's not much of an HIV problem.
I'm
in
just
China,
saying,
yeah.
but we have the agreements. We have the links.
Sure.
I mean, they solicited money from a very famous Chicago-based donor, Fred Eichner, Eychaner.
Okay.
They took more than $4 million from him, starting in 2004,
Yeah.
to fight HIV/AIDS in China.
Sure.
At a time when the Clinton Foundation had no authority to fight HIV/AIDS outside anywhere,
Okay.
let alone in China.
Yeah.
And there are memoranda of understanding with Chinese government figures of that era, saying how they did it. There's specific names in the Clinton Foundation filing. But sitting here in America, I can't pierce through there. On the other hand,
Yeah.
if the Chinese wanted to say, now wait a minute, here's what really happened. We're shocked.
Mm-hmm.
The good news is there's a way to get your money back. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, because
No,
the
there
money
is.
goes different places. Recently, some guy was caught in China. He had about, what was it, $100 billion worth of gold in his basement.
Nice. Must have been a big
They
house.
found it, yeah.
He's a shrewd
I might
saver.
be wrong in the number, but it was a shocking number.
Right.
Okay.
I think my
so
mom
these people
has
are
steaks from 2006. This guy's got gold.
So the thing is, this crackdown is for real, and this guy had it in his basement. He was hiding it, and then the police just found it. And you would think that in a corrupt situation, oh, don't tell anyone. Let's just take our share and then leave. No, they took the guy's money and they put him in jail.
Good.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's the way they get all of it.
Well,
Your plan, you only get a little.
obviously it goes to the government, but the facts are is this guy, he was like a local leader of some small town or something.
Now, you make many good points in your book, but one thing that American readers, and it actually
Sure.
fits well with the preceding slide on investment.
Okay.
You say here that if China does reform, then many businesses will go bankrupt, and that's a pain that you can't immediately take, and there'll be
Yeah,
ripple
sure.
effects and all that. That kind of, I think, is in sync with the numbers that I'm suggesting that under
Oh, I see.
the previous approach,
Yeah.
where however things happen, they were going to continue happening, and you'd be able to keep on doing
Sure.
whatever you're doing, even though you're not necessarily making that much money in your company.
okay.
And those days are going to change.
Yes.
You're saying, I think, the same thing, and that China needs more time to absorb.
And they do.
those
And see,
changes.
this is also something that I've seen from people, and I think also, if I ever had a chance to talk to Trump or the White House, is certain things that maybe they don't understand too well, is that Chinese culture does play a major issue in how their negotiations are. And so the Chinese thinking is when you hurry someone, when you rush someone, to them, that's a sign of weakness on the other side. Because if you're rushing, that means you're getting emotional. You can't control that emotion. So if you're rushing, that means you want it more than I do. So when they see Trump pushing and says, here's this deadline, here's this, and then it's like, then the Chinese are sort of like, well, we don't want it as bad as you. What's going on is that this cultural issue is that the Chinese by nature are really care about face. And so if it looks like they're too emotional, to them, that is a sign of weakness.
Right.
Okay?
So, and what I would say, I will never figure out the face issues. I acknowledge that there are such things,
Yeah.
but I'm at a stage in my life where I'm too old to try to figure out certain things. But I would just prefer to take a step back and say, let's just look at, without regard to the American position
Sure.
or the Chinese position, the Martian position, Alpha Centauri position. Let's just look at the numbers.
Okay.
What do they show?
Sure.
Today they show a U.S. market under Trump that is dynamic, gigantic,
Yes.
and has got to be, for any company in the world, has got to be a prime market.
Sure.
Right? If you're a serious multinational company, you need to be serving the U.S. market.
Of course.
Right? And what I don't think Trump and his team are doing is saying, we're not going to let you in the U.S. market.
But what happened? Look at Huawei. They
Well,
banned them.
Well, that's
China worries that you're going to start banning all the Chinese companies from coming.
right.
And they have a
Weren't they
good
spying
reason.
or something? Wasn't that woman?
And Google doesn't spy?
Kick them out of
Facebook doesn't
China.
spy?
I don't care. Kick them out.
Well, we're not in this
Okay.
program pro Google, pro
No, okay.
Facebook, or
Yeah.
pro
Thanks
spying.
for the YouTube channel, but otherwise, screw them.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is those are, but also at the same time, the thing about Huawei is, like you just said, oh, we're not going to stop Chinese companies from coming, but I just gave an example.
Well, no, okay,
Yeah.
let's take that since you brought it up.
Okay.
We have not yet had in this country, and I don't know about China, but in this country, a fair discussion about the business model of Facebook, Google, Huawei's competitors,
Sure.
Verizon, AT&T. What, we had Barack Obama tell us many times when the subject of metadata came up
Yeah.
that, oh, don't worry, we're just collecting metadata. That doesn't mean anything. You shouldn't worry about
Sure.
that. And it is a fair discussion to have, this business model where you give stuff away
Yes.
to unsuspecting people,
Okay.
and you don't tell them, how
Yes.
valuable the information that they put into the device,
Yeah.
the Alexa, the Huawei router,
Yeah.
or whatever. You don't tell them how valuable the information is that Huawei will get, or
Sure.
that Facebook will get, or Google. That needs to be regulated better.
It should be. I totally agree.
I am not for. I basically don't hardly use Facebook at this point. I use Twitter a little bit, but I think just as here in New York, you may notice, and I'm not in favor of this particularly, that when you go into a restaurant, it says for every item that you're going to buy, it tells you how many calories in each item is.
I haven't seen that.
I paid attention to that.
You need to go to
I
McDonald's.
think I
more
saw,
often.
something like 1,000
I'm going to the wrong
calories
restaurants.
or something. Yeah.
But in these fast food type restaurants, so excuse me, so that in theory a consumer can make a more educated choice. Similarly with
Like, get
Facebook
the
and
hell out
Google,
of there.
you should be told, look, if you use Gmail, then we are going to have access to everything every draft, everything. We
Yes.
are going to mine it. We are going to profile you. You're giving us a valuable sense of yourself and your buying habits,
Yeah.
and maybe your health, and we're going to monetize the shit out of that. So
Yeah.
you get this thing for free, and we're going to make $1 billion off you, whatever the math is.
Yeah.
And before you get to the issue, which I think is certainly a fair issue, both
Yeah.
for IBM doing business in China
Sure.
or Huawei trying to do business here, before you get into the brutal reality that you have a military and we have a military,
Yes.
you have a cyber command, we have a
Sure.
cyber command. We're not talking about selling hot dogs to each other. We're talking about stuff that could have great military sensitivity.
And that stuff can also be used by the U.S. military.
I agree. I
So-
agree. I'm not saying.
So what I'm asking for is why my book is titled "The Reciprocal Deal." What I want to emphasize is fairness. So for when Huawei was blocked because they were accused of spying, but at the same time Google is almost doing practically the same stuff. And then when Obama was president, they were.
Obama was spying on Angela Merkel.
And
He
they
was
were
spying
probably
on
and he was
Cheryl
probably
Atkinson.
using Google.
Oh yeah, he was spying.
Okay.
Not probably, certainly.
So don't use
He's
the
probably
argument.
listening to everything we're saying
So
right
all
now.
I'm getting at is just don't use that argument because you can easily say that about Google.
Again, you're not
Yeah.
talking about somebody who's pro Google. I mean,
Exactly,
I am anti-monopolist. I'm or oligopolist. I'm anti-abuse. I think humans are all flawed,
Sure.
right? And
Charles
so
doesn't even put up with foot faults.
I don't, especially with George Soros. Did that in
I'm
a
not a
game.
fan of Soros either.
No, I'm neither. So I guess my point is that this is a book that I have taken time not to read every page, but to read enough of it to say to people, you should get the book, you should read it. You also have, I think, from time to time, you do different appearances, and you have a body of work that people should
Thank you.
get to know.
Yeah. Well, one of the main reasons I wrote the book is I just want people to get a better understanding of China. For Americans, I just think there's a lot of misunderstandings about the country, and I want them to see that there are some good things about China, and it is a good country to invest in. And I think if you do have a U.S.-China trade deal, it will benefit not only the Chinese, but it's also going to benefit America very well, because I believe many of Chinese are going to invest into more factories in America. They will make a lot more investments in U.S. They're worried right now because of the tensions that they could be blocked. After what happened with Huawei, they worried their companies could also be banned and blocked. So that's why they're a little bit hesitant about these investing in America right now. But I believe if Trump and Xi get together, maybe in Iowa, sign a phase 1 trade agreement, then you're going to see a tidal wave of Chinese investments coming into America, and America is going to be even more successful than it is right now.
All right. Well, that's a good and hopeful note, and let's hope that it does happen. But Jason, why don't we just quickly go to the next page, because it's a natural. I talked to you about this, and I don't know if we ever did the math together.
Sure.
But here's China and America compared off 2017 data on consumption per capita. Okay. But doing it a little bit more cleverly than the standard person, in my view, the standard person does it. The CIA World Factbook, which is hardly perfect, makes an estimate of how much the top 10% consume of total consumption. In China's case, the most recent estimate, don't ask me why it's 2012, is 31.4%.
CIA is busy.
They're busy, yeah. They are busy. In the case of America, it's 30%. 2007. I think we could definitely do a better estimate of that. In fact, we do something called the Consumer Expenditure Survey. Every 6 months, it's online. We talked about it. We could use a more recent estimate. But anyway, you then are able, with these figures, you're able to figure out the consumption of the top 10% in each country, the population of the top 10%, and then therefore the consumption, the richest decile. The average consumption is 10,000 in China. In America, it's 122,000. It's a big difference.
That's huge.
Yeah, very big difference. And people talk about it and they say, well, China, I'm not saying China is an insignificant market. What I'm saying is that the suite of products and services that are sold in the United States to a very deep market are different than the suite of products and services that the mass of China is going to buy, right? And again, I'm not trying to dismiss the Chinese market. I think it's a market that has great potential.
You have lower incomes there.
Right.
Yeah.
And we in Chinese save and don't borrow. We borrow excessively.
My wife is very good at saving.
Good.
She's Chinese.
That's very good.
Yeah.
So the bottom 90% of consumption, we get the consumption, we get the population. And look at the difference here. In China, the bottom 90%, so the vast majority of China, consumes $2,500 a person per year.
Yeah.
Our bottom 10%, 90% consume $31,000.
Wow.
Okay. And this is just by way of saying that, and this is at a time when we both were talking about this earlier, the Chinese population can find labor incomes. Right? The American population, increasingly, it's harder and harder because we pay our people more. And so technology can replace those people more readily. Go into McDonald's today, one right near here, and you'll see.
Same in China.
And China, right? So it's
so you have the robots now.
Right. So that's the demand side, just a rough cut demand side. So just showcasing that the markets are different. Our consumers buy different things. Yes, you've got rich people in China, but I'm talking about the deep market.
Americans do buy a lot.
This is your 142 million people compared to our 33 million. Right? So it's different slices. Then look at the investment. Those figures that I gave up before, you've invested in China $39.34 trillion over 11 years, which works out to being $28,000 a person. Okay. In America, we've invested $36 trillion, which works out to be $111,000 a person.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right. So it's a big. So the point is, in this country, I will say public sector investment. Assume that 50% of it is a waste. Just write it out. Write it off. 50%, and that's being generous.
What's it wasted on?
It's the Clinton Foundation. You say that this Boston Big Dig or the Clinton Foundation, the Big Dig, the tunnel that we spent, whatever we spent, $15 billion on it.
And then
we should have spent $2 billion, and the unions got $5 billion, and the politicians got $3 billion, and who knows. In the public sector, there is a tremendous amount of waste. When Nancy Pelosi and the Republican equivalents start talking about infrastructure deals, watch out. That's just more corruption in this country. So I put this up here just because these are, again, figures that are available either through RCIA, it's online and free, or through UNCTAD. And we could quibble with these numbers. We could say that maybe the units of the rich have more people in them than the units of the poor, or vice versa. You have the one-child policy in China.
Now it's 2. They changed it to 2.
2, but we can have 6 and 7 and 10.
Yeah. One thing I also like to address in regards to the consumption, and like you did point out, it's 2012. China in recent years has realized that they need to increase their consumption.
Right.
And part of it is also consumption brings more global power. The reason the Americans have a lot of political influence all over the world is they can just simply threaten other countries to stop buying their imports. So when China becomes a bigger buyer, they will have the power to tell people what to influence them, just like what America is doing right now. Just look at how America is talking to Europe or in Latin America. It's because the market is so strong, and for Americans, it's too hard for other countries to say no to the USA.
Yeah, I think, you know, with Trump, there is no question that his swagger and and his, I mean, he's not somebody who cares about face issues.
No, he doesn't. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he
yeah.
obviously
All
does
that
not.
orange crap on his own face
he-
proves that.
Right.
I mean, but what I'm trying to get at earlier is the fact is that the Chinese, of course, at first were a little bit shocked because they were dealing with prior presidents who were not so strong.
Nimrods?
They didn't know how to negotiate. They were not real deal makers. So this is one of the first times the Chinese had a real tough negotiator. And they just thought maybe if he gets impeached or something happens, then they can forget about it. But now they've come to a realization that Trump's probably going to win re-election. The Democrats really don't have anyone who's inspiring them. So they've come to acceptance that Trump will get reelected. So how to find a way to make a deal, but it has to be this feeling of a win-win. The Chinese, if it's, Trump wins, President Xi loses, then there's not going to be a deal signed. There's just got to be something for China to feel as if they had some type of win as well. Mm-hmm. Okay? For Trump to overwhelm and to just say, it's either my way or the highway, the Chinese won't sign on to that. And if it means that he will raise tariffs for the rest of his term in office, then China will just have to accept that.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think I'm just talking off the top of my head. I mean, one area where I think there would possibly be a win-win is America's. I'm the product of my father is a nuclear physicist, so I'm hopeless in technology and science as a result. But as are sadly too many Americans. You know, American kids today on global scale come in like 30th or way down in science and math. Whereas Chinese students are very high. So a cooperative effort to see how we could raise...
and China would support that. Yeah. I know for a fact China would support cooperation. One time I met somebody and I was discussing that very issue. And he says, we want to do open sourcing with America, but Peter Navarro shut that down.
Yeah. I don't know the specific on that, but that would seem to be an area where,
and China would support that. I know for a fact they would.
Right. Well, so what we're going to do now, if it's okay, is I've got some news things to go through, and you're more than welcome to chime in here. But
I will stay out of the way.
No, that's fine. So the anti-Trump probes that we've heard about, and people say they started in June of 2016, right? That's rubbish. However, here is something that came out in Zero Hedge recently. It says that Ukraine was where December 2015. Ukraine was where the anti-Trump Russia hoax began.
That makes a lot. Shanahan's been saying this for 2 years.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And we have a lot of this is pulled up below in the slide. But this is the source for some of what I'm going to talk about in a second. So we go back into this history. Hillary Clinton leaves the State Department on the 1st of February 2013. Now, every job I've left and I'm not in government, when you leave a serious job, your employer says,
Charles, put down that computer.
right, you can't take anything. That isn't your personal property, right? Here's Hillary Clinton flying around the world. She's got a secret office at 77 Water Street with Dennis Cheng. We don't know who that guy is and his background. And she's keeping all of her correspondence during not only the period when she was Secretary of State, but the crucial period as she was jockeying to become Secretary of State. Nobody has yet investigated. Boy, you're trying to give me a heart attack here, Jason?
I'm trying to make you laugh.
You're succeeding. Oh my God. That is a scary thought.
You get an email server. You get an email server. Everybody gets an email server.
Boy, can you imagine how her grandkids, how tough it is for them to sleep at night? Grandma's coming to read us books. Anyway, so she leaves on the 1st of February, and it's not till the 30th of September that somebody comes to fill this Inspector General of the State Department role. The entire time that she was Secretary of State, she changed the way in which aid was administered. USAID reported to her people.
That's a CIA thing.
I know. And so all the while she's Secretary of State, she has no Inspector General to check anything, right? That is extremely unusual, and I need to know, Americans need to know, the world needs to know, who cut that deal? Because that deal had to be approved by Obama or at least Valerie Jarrett, right? Then on the 21st of April, as tensions were getting pretty high. People forget in America that we had given assurance, H.W. Bush had assured the leader of the Soviet Union at the time, before it blew up, that we would not push east into the former Soviet republics.
But the problem is H.W. Bush is a liar.
Exactly, yeah, that's what it's useful to have all these liars, right? But the good news on that is he's still dead. So nonetheless, on the 21st of April, Biden goes to Kiev and shows support, right? But days later, this idiot, Hunter Biden, goes on the board of Burisma. Days later. I mean, it wouldn't be that complicated to have a real grown-up in the White House saying, Joe, I know you're a schmo, but this is not going to happen. You can't do this.
Fat. I'm going to do some push-ups here. I'm having a stroke standing still. You're going to start doing push-ups.
That's right. So, I mean, just at the very beginning, there should have been grown-ups. All these patriotic State Department people we saw in the impeachment hearing who came forward and said Donald Trump's doing this wrong and this isn't right. How come nobody in the State Department said, wait a minute, Hillary Clinton is doing all this work, sending emails out, keeping classified information in both of her mansions up there in Chappaqua and down in Washington, D.C. Nobody complained about that. And then the Republicans win control of the U.S. Senate. We increase our share in the House. And only a month after that do the lawyers for Hillary Clinton give, quote, all of her work-related emails into the State Department. Only then. So this is how many months? This is, almost 2 years. It then takes a tremendous amount of time for the Inspector General and the Intelligence Committee, this guy McCulloch.
It's more than 2 years.
Huh?
It's almost 3 years.
13 to 14?
I thought it was December 9th, 2015. Sorry.
No, here.
Sorry.
This December.
Never mind.
So, yeah. So the 6th of July, 2015, the Inspector General, and I spelled the name wrong, it's O-U-G-H, but he issues this report as Hillary's getting ready to run for president, which instigates on the 10th an actual FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton. And my first reaction when I saw this is that this McCulloch guy, must be a good guy. I mean, he saw this, it took him a while, but he triggers this investigation. On the 7th of December, this is from the article in here, Biden travels to Ukraine to announce this program to fight corruption, but he's also negotiating a $1 billion loan guarantee, right? And it's going to be conditioned on the Ukraine government not going after Hunter Biden.
Yes. I'm sure you already know this about McCulloch.
What?
He's with Compass Rose.
No, I know. That's the next slide.
Sorry.
I might already know that, Jason.
Yeah.
You're stealing my thunder.
Sorry.
I only have so many lines. Anyway, but this is interesting. On the 9th of December, The person, and don't say his name, the person whose name we
You've
cannot
written
say.
it right there.
I didn't say it.
But we can't say that.
We can't say it. We don't want our overlords to. The very person whose name we can't say, who might be the person who has instigated this ridiculous impeachment effort, meets 2 days later with a Ukrainian crony at the executive office building to discuss how we're going to get this money. What are you doing?
I mean, we're playing with fire here.
Okay, but how they're going to cooperate in this program, which is 59% funded by our State Department, and the balance funded by a Ukrainian charity controlled by George Soros.
Oh, interesting.
Right? No corrections here.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
We can't. I mean, why would you investigate this? The fact that maybe what Giuliani is doing and what people are stirring up here might just implicate George Soros, a whole bunch of scumbags who are doing their level best to rig the 2015 and 16 elections and primaries.
Is it possible that Pompeo could be deep state too, and we should be suspicious of him?
Yeah.
I'm just curious because many people in China want to know that.
Yeah,
What is your opinion?
I would be concerned. I mean, he was head of the CIA. He was, but I mean, his background is pretty impressive, actually.
Yes.
When you look into the fact he was number 1 in his class at West Point, he was a top graduate of Harvard Law School. Unlike these people who, they went there. McCain was like, I think he was bottom of his class at the Naval Academy.
The dumbest student in the class.
Yeah, which is that's saying something. I mean, he had no military background. Oh no, his father was a big deal in the military, and his grandfather was a big deal. And this guy is bottom of his class in the Naval Academy. But so we have with this background. This is just some of the background. We could go on for pages and pages. Let's go to the next slide. All right, now. We did a special presentation on the 10th of November where we talked about, it was really bad liars, we talked about this Values United, and we talked about this whistleblower.org. Okay. Values United is a fraudulent charity that has never legitimately received authority to operate as whistleblower.aid.org. Now, just for the people in China and elsewhere who might not specifically understand what I'm saying, in the United States, there is for a charity, there's no passport that allows you to set up a charity in Louisiana, which I think was where they started at this thing, and then instantly you're good to do business anywhere in the country. That's not the way it works. If you start, you have to pick a place to start, any one of the states or Washington, D.C.
Sure.
And then if you want to operate that charity in most of the other locations, you have to register again in each location, truthfully, and you have to report truthfully. And then if you want, the real name of this charity is Values United. If you want to use a doing business as name, a so-called fictitious name in New York, you have to get a certificate of assumed name sworn out with our Secretary of State, and then you have to file that certificate of assumed name in every New York county in which you want to use that name. And you have to refile every year. So
that's only for a charity.
But I mean, this whistleblower.aid.org is the charity that is defending the person whose name cannot be named because we don't know who it is.
Yes.
This
because
is the
they're
crooked
trying to convert America into China.
into a bad version of China, right?
Yeah.
And this whistleblower.aid.org, is it soliciting now, Jason? I think we can answer that question by just looking right there.
This here?
Yeah.
I'm sure it is. Yes, this is like a GoFundMe or something.
Here it is. This is right now, the fact that this is up online, it's soliciting, and it's not even using its real name. The name of this thing is Values United. There is no whistleblower aid, but
why does it not say Values United?
Because when you check into the paperwork of Values United, you see all the fraud.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right?
Look, it says all donations are tax deductible. This is going to get you jammed up if they're not.
Right. If you can copy that number into ProPublica.
Coming up.
You remember ProPublica, Nonprofit Explorer?
Okay. Oh, I know it well.
I know you do. It knows you well, Jason. There are many services in the United States that allow you to get these charity stuff for free, information for free.
Okay.
If we punch that number into the advanced section, allows you to put.
I'm getting there. We are looking for an EIN right here. Okay. And here we are. Boom.
All right, what does it come back and say? The name of this thing is Whistleblower Aid? No, it says Values United.
Like this.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
With this name, Whistleblower Aid. But they're soliciting for Whistleblower Aid. There's no proof, no legitimate proof. There's no 990, by the way, for 2018, and it was due November 15th. It should have been up.
This looks, I mean, I'm no business expert, Charles, but this looks like a problem to me.
Yeah, this is what we talked about. You know, you can't have a charity have revenue of $22,000 and expenses of $642,000.
Where'd the rest of the money come from?
From the principals, they loaned money to this charity. We did a whole show on this. The numbers do not pass. They're not eligible to take the smell test, let alone talking about passing the smell test.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So keep going back to the slide. So who would be principally involved representing this whistleblower.aid.org? None other than the crooked, in my view, Inspector General of the Intelligence Committee, Charles McCulloch.
And he's a Democrat, right?
I don't know, but the point is this guy was the same person who was investigating Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified information. He was the point person, and he couldn't see an obvious fraud. Now, are you able, Jason, to put up the FBI vault Hillary R. Clinton so we can show Tom? And I mean, like, one thing that's really odd about our system is that the FBI has an internet interface, and they put files up. Now, remember, how many times did you hear Hillary Clinton say during the election in 15 and 16 that the investigation of Hillary Clinton was a part of a normal security review? It was not a criminal investigation. Don't worry.
Ooh,
here's a 37-part file.
Wow.
Incredible detail. Anybody can get, any Chinese, any foreign person can go on the site, read all this stuff. We've done show after show after show about it. People said, Judge Knapp, who I've met, and I think he's okay, but he's gone off the reservation.
He's very never Trump, right?
Yeah, he's been quoted many times as saying there's never been a transcript of Hillary Clinton's interview by the FBI, by James Comey in July of 2007.
Probably still typing it up.
No, it's part 2.
Oh, so why did he say that?
There are transcripts, you said.
Well, let's show you.
And it's on file?
Right here, part 2.
But Charles, why did Judge Knapp say that?
Because I don't know. Here it is.
Is it just because he's never Trump?
On July 2, 2016, Hillary, date of birth, was interviewed by Federal Bureau of... Here's a transcript of it.
Interesting.
Here's the digest of it. This is the kind of stuff that you can see. And, the mainstream press assumes that we in America are stupid.
They're not going to... Well, look, I didn't even know about this until you just told me. I'm now enlightened. I'm not a Hillary Clinton fan. I'm always looking for dirt on her.
I'm surprised it says anything.
And I just found this out.
I
am shocked.
Yeah. Well, same thing. Let's put up, Jason. Let's put up the William J. Clinton Foundation FBI file. People say that the Clinton Foundation has never been investigated before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that there's nothing to it.
Okay.
Well, who conducted the investigation of? Was there an investigation of William J. Clinton by the FBI and of Hillary Clinton for public corruption? Well, here's the file.
They got his brother on video.
Yeah. And
so this is easy to find on the FBI.
Yeah, just punch into Google.
FBI vault, William J. Clinton.
Wow, that's very helpful.
And what's interesting here is it says it was from February of 2001 through sometime in 2005, but the part 3, which only just came out a number of months ago, reveals for the first time that Hillary Clinton was under investigation for public corruption in less than 2 months. During her first and only elected position as a senator. The FBI opened an investigation into Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton for public corruption.
Howard Stern thinks she's great.
Howard Stern.
I'm done with Howard Stern, for real.
He's dead to me.
He's dead to me too, Charles.
I no longer listen to him.
Not out of vindictiveness. I listened to it and I could not believe how he was pandering to Hillary Clinton, how he didn't ask her a single difficult question about a real topic. It was a total advertisement.
Why is he acting this way? Because he used to be friends with Trump.
I don't know Howard Stern, and I can't anticipate why he would act this way, but perhaps when you get into this world of having hundreds of millions of dollars and everything's kind of going your way, being counter mainstream
He's no longer the rebel.
Right.
I see what you mean.
Exactly.
Perfect. Good explanation.
So these are things. Let's go back though into the slide for a sec. So the team, again, we're dealing. We have an impeachment crisis so serious, right? That people are talking about civil wars.
Worst president ever, they're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're wrong. He's the best.
And the person.
I agree.
And the person who's representing this whistleblower, who's unnamed, is being represented by a law firm that's part of a charity that's a fraud. And the guy has an obvious conflict of interest here, right? I mean, he failed to see Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified information, to put it charitably. So who's he working with, this guy? Is he working with, a representative sample of, there's 3 partners in this Compass Rose law firm. The second one used to work for Chuck McCulloch and is a CIA guy.
Oh.
In the CIA office. So it's very clear that Trump and Giuliani are over the target here of the deep state, and the deep state is grasping at straws.
And
that's why
they're
sending out pencil neck Schiff and this ludicrous bobblehead doll Nadler.
I think they probably figure if either of those guys get taken out, that's all right.
That's right, exactly. So we keep on going then, Jason, to the next slide.
But wait, Charles, I have a question. So if this McCulloch guy, I mean, he's obviously corrupt. Why did he report that thing to the FBI?
My suspicion, originally I couldn't understand it, but then a penny went up. When I looked at the parts that the FBI were sending out early, part 1, 5 or whatever, 6, 7 of the 37 parts, it was letter after letter from Chuck McCulloch to all the other inspector generals and other people saying, give us all your files. And I have a feeling what he was doing was vacuuming up in the government system, saying, look, I have to study this, get to the bottom of it. Give me everything that you may have on Hillary Clinton that could be incriminated. Don't worry, I'll take care of it, I'll make sure.
But of course it's only going to be copies. However, from a lawyer's standpoint, it still makes sense to know strategically what information they have on your client or whoever it is you're trying to protect, so that you can start to develop a counter strategy.
Right, exactly.
Very interesting. United Nations did the same strategy. Every time there was some corruption, they would announce an investigation so that they can get all the evidence and then bury it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a nice business model.
Yeah.
I'm being so another book that came out, and Jason, this is the one I've been telling you you really need to read. You, Tom, might want to read it too. Gillen Howard's book, Dead Men Tell No Tales, is a quick read. I read very quickly, but this is thin book, no index. But I just excerpt here a few little gems from this book, covering the period after Epstein was fired by Bear Stearns to 1987, when he went to work for the second largest Ponzi scheme mastermind who's currently in prison. What was he doing? We've never been able to know until I read this book recently. It says, in 81, he was jobless, homeless, and running out of funds. Bear in mind that in 81, he was also a college dropout twice and had been fired by Bear Stearns.
Wow.
Right? So in 81, he gets fired. So he had to bend the rules. So he takes on controversial black market clients like Adnan Khashoggi. He moves to Europe, and he's selling weapon systems that he was not supposed to sell. With Adnan Khashoggi to foreign dictators and other people. At the same time, Khashoggi was involved running drugs in Colombia. So this is in the book. All right.
Very interesting.
And it does mention in this book that Khashoggi was, in theory, part of the CIA, or at least known to the CIA. And then they make this connection to Bill Barr's father, Donald Barr, and then Bill also worked for the CIA.
What did they say about it?
It just said Epstein's old Donald Barr had worked for the OSS, the precursor to the CIA. It just says Barr's son, William Barr, would work for the CIA as well. It doesn't connect any dots, but as far as I'm concerned, anybody who has CIA connections must explain. It goes into the penalty box, in my view.
Right.
Trying to sort through this deep state, because it seems to me people in the CIA have been profiting from the deep state.
Sort of the WTF box.
Exactly. Yeah. So It says he gets. This is hilarious. In '87, he meets this guy Stephen Hoffenberger, right? Mm-hmm. And it says Epstein had applied to this Towers Financial.
Faulty Towers Financial.
He gets an introduction from his employer in Europe named Douglas Leese, and we'll show him in a second, who was very unhappy with Jeffrey Epstein's behavior. Now, if you're very unhappy with an employee's behavior, why are you introducing him to anybody?
Exactly.
Right? Why was he very unhappy? Because Epstein had submitted fraudulent expense reports in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Nothing to do with the sex with kids behavior.
Probably. Maybe. Yeah,
Which was he upset about? The 100,000?
100,000
Right.
yeah.
And they wanted to discharge Jeffrey Epstein. They realized, though, that he had a great ability on Wall Street. This is a great ability. You were dropped out of college, fired from a schlock outfit, Bear Stearns, which really was a schlock outfit in 1981. Oh. Never amounted to anything there. Go to work for an arms dealer and a drug runner in Europe. In what way is that great ability, and how does that qualify you to go work for this Towers Financial? It just doesn't really.
Charles, I know I've mentioned this many times, but it stuck out to me so much when it first happened. And when you talk about drug dealing and arms dealing, I did read an article about the Boeing 727 that said that at least one had been modified by the CIA so that this rear door was a bomb release. And so if you're a weapons dealer, you could load a bunch of JDAMs or whatever into this plane that looks like a commercial jet. It's registered as a private jet. You could fly it anywhere and launch 5 laser-guided bombs and destroy a pretty hardened target.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And
plus you could drop drugs out the back.
Sure, and kids you're done with and whatever.
A lot of things.
Yeah, it's horrible stuff. So actually, if we go back into the slide, there's another funny thing. It talks here. He gets introduced to Stephen Hoffenberger of Towers Financial Corporation, and then they describe it as a leading debt collection and corporate rating agency. There is no such thing. There's no.
In the mafia there is.
Corporate rating?
Yeah, you're going to break your fingers.
Yeah,
so this guy.
Fingers or arms.
So who is this person, Doug Leese, who employed him? Look at this Reddit thing here.
Doug Leese to own.
It's this, now you always have to check Reddit stuff, but a lot of times it's interesting. This is a lengthy piece that goes on and on and on about this Lease family, and they're suspicious. They're a British arms dealer, connections all over with suspicious people. This is who Epstein's working for 6 years. I mean, no serious investment bank, no serious investor would give this guy 1 penny. If you had legitimate money with this in his background. No way.
Criminal stuff.
There's no way. If you're worth $1 billion legitimately, the last thing you want to do is invite the SEC or the feds to come in and investigate you because you're palling around with an arms dealer with all these suspicious connections.
Right.
You wouldn't even dream of doing it, right? So Les Wexner giving a whole bunch of money, supposedly being the first client of Jeffrey Epstein, makes no sense. Who is this Stephen Hoffenberg? He's in prison. There are many links for Stephen Hoffenberg, but he's in prison for the biggest Ponzi scheme, which is a financial fraud, before Madoff. That's where. So we hit, that one.
I was just thinking last night, Charles, I was watching an interview with Virginia Giuffre, and it just occurred to me that, if we're hearing all this about Jeffrey Epstein raping kids, that's probably the least bad thing that he did.
Well, now just go down this a little page. This is Mr. Hoffenberg. Notice the hat. Clinton Gore. He's the guy who saved the Post.
Well, I was going to say, notice the shirt. The Washington Post is
New York
suspicious.
Post. New York Post.
New York Post. That's what I meant. Highly suspicious. They ran a ton of articles about Epstein. They've run, historically, a ridiculous number of articles about In-N-Out Burger, where Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend was last seen, where their assistant legal counsel, Mr. G. Allen McNamee, is more interested in suing me than turning their CCTV footage over to the FBI. He's threatened me with both a lawsuit and criminal actions, violated the California bar rules of ethics when he did that.
Wow. But you look at this guy, you shouldn't judge people by their appearance alone, but here's a guy, he's in prison.
He
Right.
kind of looks like Bill Clinton.
Should we judge him by that?
Yes. 18 years, I think, in prison. Or maybe he's out of prison, I guess.
Oh.
But he was quoted in the Post, he really just wants to help Epstein's victims. Isn't that nice?
Help him do what?
I don't know.
Let me help you out the back door of this plane here. What is this guy doing, Joe?
Oh, man. So, and the real question of Epstein's role in the Tower financial fraud, we don't have a straight story on how integrally involved. Why did Hoffenberg go to prison, and why did Epstein stay out of prison? I mean, if the two of them were both doing the same stuff, I would have thought that Epstein should have been in prison for that too.
Good point. But perhaps this guy didn't know Alexander Acosta.
Exactly. So if we go to the final 2 pages are about our mutual friend, Mr. Obama. And we've gone back through the files I have in the last several days. And I just wanted to bring to people's attention how fucked up the filings are of the charity. I had not appreciated until recently just how bad they are.
Now, if we're going to go there, do we want this supplemental image? Or?
What are you talking about, Jason? The art department from time to time has images that
well,
come to light.
There's runoff when you're trying to dress presidents as, in drag. There's some peripheral things that come up.
Oh, boy. That art department.
I don't know who made this, Charlie.
Yeah, you better, discipline them.
It's totally legitimate journalism right there.
Yeah. So this is an interesting story in Chicago business. Apparently, Obama has lots of enemies in Chicago.
Not surprising.
This effort to create the Easter Island head replica. Look at this thing.
No, wait. Is it
What-
actually
what is
constructed
that?
now? That looks more real than the other
Is that a
ones.
mock? I think. Let me see what it says at the bottom.
North-facing view of the Public Plaza Museum.
It's a rendering. You see, renderings Obama Foundation.
Huh, but they're
But
getting
doesn't
more
it look?
realistic.
It looks to me like an Easter Island head.
I mean, it looks like some sort of symbolic shrine of
Is it
something.
a phallic symbol or something?
No, I think it's some sort of Masonic, I don't know what.
Yeah, but I put this story up here just to say that for being a favorite son in theory of Chicago, Illinois, which of course he wasn't born there, but he lives there. He's got a mansion there, one of his mansions there. It's tough sledding, and the opponents of this thing in Illinois have not done their homework yet to realize that the charity itself is a fraud. It was illegally organized and illegally operated. In fact, it's never been organized lawfully. So you want to pull this thing down and stop it from desecrating an historic district. You don't need to waste time on hearings. Just focus on the charity fraud side, as I'll now show you. So when you set up a charity, you have to, there's a distinction. If you just go down or you have your lawyer incorporate a company,
Okay.
that's not organizing. That's just incorporating. It's the first, you are not organized until a minimum of 3 directors get together if it's a corporation, hold a meeting, and and formally acknowledge that you want to come together and run this charity, and you adopt bylaws and you conduct such other business. You have to do all that
Okay.
as more than one person. Instead of doing it this way, something called Barack Obama Foundation, and we've had this problem with the Clinton Foundation. Its real name is originally the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, but its first tax filing is for something called William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, leaving out the "the." You can't do that.
Okay.
You've got to get the real legal name. If you want to use a different name, you got to register it, and all that. None of that's done right. And when you have that kind of sloppiness in place after place after place, you're simply making the case that you're not organized. You're nothing but a collection of people who are trying to, con money out of friends to have, the friendly con pay for that's the bribe, but you can't call it that. The money coming into your bribe, and then you help out your
You
people.
could just call it Sadiq Khan.
That's right, he's idiot. So on the 31st of January 2014, this fellow, Bob Bauer, who we'll talk about in a second, signs an incorporation document that says the headquarters of this Barack Obama Foundation are in Chicago. Now, to be in Chicago, you have to register,
Okay.
right? They have not registered in Chicago by the 31st of January. And then they say that they are going to be engaged in religious purposes. Now, how does a foundation involving Barack Obama get involved in religious purposes? I fail to see how a
Sharia law.
presidential
Maybe
library...
Muslim.
Right, but a presidential library is not allowed to do that. A presidential library has to represent the broad interests of the public. It cannot be, pro-Muslim or pro-Christian or anti-Jewish or whatever. It's got to be
Stick to IMAX theaters and destroying countries.
Exactly. And the sole person who signs this incorporation document is Bob Bauer. Okay, Bob Bauer was the White House counsel under Obama who suddenly resigned
Right.
the moment that his subordinate returned from a trip to Hawaii to get the birth certificate, the physical copy of Barack Obama's birth certificate, and flew all the way from Washington or Chicago all the way to Hawaii, comes all the way back with an emailed
PDF document.
PDF document. Why would you need to do that? In his guy, he instantly resigns. He wasn't planning on resigning.
Why did he do that?
Because as a guest, he realized he was in serious trouble.
Sure.
But so then why is he hanging out with Obama now?
Because he's trying to cover up the trouble. See, if he couldn't, it was
So he
untenable.
didn't know what to do.
It was untenable to be an employee of the U.S. government, which he was as White House counsel, because he knew, right? He knew,
Too
right?
much oversight.
Well, he knew as a guest that if the best you're going to come back with is an electronic copy of something and you have no physical copy, he knew it was a forgery. And he couldn't continue to be on the take of the U.S. government.
Wow.
He could cover for Obama as a private lawyer, because there you're preserving your client's interest in theory. So I think that's why he did it.
I like it, Charles.
Yeah, and so here this guy, now we've got, Obama's still the president, and he needs a slush fund, and he's watched the Clintons operate their slush fund. So he gets Bob Bauer to amend the Articles of Incorporation to change the name to the Barack Obama Foundation. Okay? And that act should have been done if there were trustees at that time. Trustees should have done that. Bylaws should have been issued, and the article should
Loretta
have...
Fuddy was that lady's name. People are talking about
Right.
the plane crash
Right.
where everybody, except for her,
Right.
lived.
That's after the fact.
After she got the document, yes.
No, Loretta Fuddy was the person in the state government of Hawaii who was supervising that process. But the person who went out to Hawaii was another woman. She's the same woman who, returning with the documents on Barack Obama's birth certificate, she's the same person who was dispatched to find Hillary Clinton's missing emails in the State Department. Right? It's something like Catherine Duval, I think. D-U-V-A-L. So, on the 27th of June, 2014, the Barack Obama Foundation hires a fundraising agent, okay, and says that its address is in Illinois, okay? And the 29th, they submit an application to Perkins Coie, Bob Bauer's law firm. Remember, Perkins Coie is the same firm that Mark Elias, the top partner in the
Paid
public,
for the dossier.
and rigged the election. Rigged the primaries. He's the one who was the lead counsel of the Clinton campaign or whatever. Same law firm. So they submit an application. They get conditional approval for this charity, the Barack Obama Foundation, whose address is listed as being in the care of Perkins Coie. So, right, the law firm. And that's significant because we see the pattern of what happened with the Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation was created by Williams and Connolly. And Williams and Connolly was owed millions of dollars by Bill Clinton at a time when he had no money. And so you get, in the case of the Clinton Foundation, and I would argue here in the Barack Obama Foundation, a serious Attorney General and FBI and IRS would say, no, wait a minute. These are political families that are trying to cover shit up, that want their loyalists involved in the foundation. This is not a real exercise in creating an independent public charity. This is a slush fund masquerading as a charity. And Williams and Connolly, the law firm, and Perkins Coie, the law firm, and David Kendall, the individual, and Bob Bauer, the individual, should be Michael Cohen.
Yeah.
Right? This is not legitimate legal work. In my
It's
view.
interesting that Michael Cohen went right to jail, and all these guys at
promoted.
Covington and Burling and all these firms you're talking about. Nothing.
Is Perkins Coie allowed to practice law in Illinois?
They're based in Illinois.
Oh, I thought it was a Washington law firm.
And so then it's not until the 25th of September that the Barack Obama Foundation registers in the key fundraising state of California. So query, what did this fundraising agent do starting the 27th of June? if it wasn't registered to solicit money. But it's not till the 25th of November 2014 that the Barack Obama Foundation registers in Illinois. How do you have an address in March in Illinois if you don't register in Illinois until the 25th of November after the midterm elections? Okay? And look at this one. They don't register in New York until this year, the 16th of January 2019. Don't tell me that the Barack Obama Foundation has not solicited in New York State. Just don't even try to tell me that. Of course they have. But they haven't registered until the 16th of January 2019. Right? So this thing, I mean, it's a smaller version of the Clinton slush fund so far.
Well, it was just getting started.
With the best is yet to come. So the statement of purpose in the 1023, which is the application for federal tax exemption, is so broad that it's not actually contemplated by the Articles of Incorporation. It's an absurd statement. You can do whatever you want, you know. And that's not what this type of presidential foundation is normally allowed to do. And I put this up here to close really with the point that the laws regarding presidential libraries need to be brought into the present. They need to contemplate modern technology. They need to contemplate the fact that campaigns are very expensive. They need to contemplate the example set by the Bushes, the Clintons, and the Obamas, now that these politically dynastic families will do anything and are viewed as basically conduits for people who want to monetize or who want to increase their influence, increase their wealth by contributing to these families via these foundations. This has to be policed. And if Donald Trump thinks that he's going to get reelected in 2020 as President of the United States without dealing with this, he is sadly mistaken.
But how
got
can he?
to drain the swamp because this is.
But
the
how?
laws,
How? Because he's tried.
No, he
They're
hasn't
stopping
tried
him.
yet.
He hasn't.
He has not.
Okay.
No, the laws are strictly on that are on the books are very, very strict.
Oh, okay.
And they could be enforced by our IRS. They could be enforced by the Justice Department. An FBI investigation is open into the Clinton Foundation. It needs to be open into the Obama Foundation. It needs to be open into all presidential foundations to see the extent to which this is going on. And we need to make an example of this, both of the foundations themselves and of the rich donors, the Gates Foundations. And then we need to go around the world to governments around the world that have contributed money to these foundations, thinking they were legitimate. They have an opportunity, if they cooperate, in my view, to get their money back, possibly with penalties and interest. So this is key, I think, to draining the swamp. And with that, I know we're a little bit over time, but
no, it's fine. I mean, my personal view is that he's been draining the swamp. That's why this impeachment is happening. I mean, we wouldn't have had Jeffrey Epstein arrested. We wouldn't have had so many of the things happening that have happened if Trump wasn't in the process of draining the swamp. There's a lot of crud clogging up the drain. I think he's getting that liquid plumber right about now.
We need some swamp Drano.
Swamp Drano, exactly. And you know, I wanted to mention, Charles, we've had some comments from viewers on Crowdsource The Truth too. Hytham G is commenting via Super Chat, and he says that we should look out for Wayne Knight, Jerry Nadler, who will have the torch with impeachment proceedings against Trump. Who's Wayne Knight?
What is it? What is the comment?
He's saying we should look out for Wayne Knight, Jerry Nadler, who will have the torch for the impeachment proceedings. I'm not familiar with Wayne Knight.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, all right.
Is there any Google information on him?
What's that?
Is there any Google
I'll look him
information?
up. And Cheryl Ann Infidel Shoes was also very generous on the Super Chat. So thank you to people contributing via Super Chat. Wayne Knight feels like a name I've heard before, but doesn't he play Batman? Oh yeah, no, he's Charles. Wayne Knight is Newman. That's what he's talking about. So Jerry Nadler is Newman.
That's good. That's
excellent
good.
comment.
Well done.
Excellent comment there. Well, it's been a wonderful presentation today. I definitely want to thank Tom for coming and joining us, and also want to remind people that they can purchase his book from a variety of retailers, including the CIA-controlled Amazon.com. The book is USA versus China, and it's the trade war to a reciprocal deal. So I think people are going to be interested in reading this book. Even if you dislike China, it's going to have important information in it, help us understand some of the complexities of this very deep and important relationship with one of the largest countries in the world.
Yes, I agree.
Anything you'd like to say in closing, Tom?
Well, basically, I just hope for a fair deal on both sides, and I think it can happen. I'm very optimistic, and I think that Trump will eventually have a very amazing win-win deal with President Xi. And will it happen next year? I'm not so sure, but I would like, and I hope so.
And is President Trump well regarded in China, would you say?
Well, they respect him. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean they always love him, but they do understand where he's coming from, that he supports an America First policy, just like China would support a China First policy. So we just got to figure out ways to resolve the trade imbalances, how to deal with the intellectual property rights, the tech transfers. A lot of these laws are going to go into effect in China starting next year. But, you know, of course, the United States and many other countries will be suspicious if these laws are enforced. So I think that if China does enforce these laws and is very effective at it, that by the end of next year, you're going to have an entire deal signed that both sides are going to be very happy.
Mm-hmm. Could be kind of a difficult thing to overcome. I hope this isn't an ignorant comment of me, but it seems sort of cultural, this notion of copying things and this ignoring of the idea of
because they got in away with it a long time. The Bush people, the Obamas, the Clintons, they did not push China on that. They would say they did, they would claim they were going to get tough on China, but they never raised tariffs on them. The reason Trump was successful was because when he raised the tariffs, he was not bluffing. The other presidents, they were only bluffing. Trump did not bluff.
But doesn't it go back way before those presidents? I mean, ever since I was a little kid, knockoff Rolexes, fake handbags, these types of things have always been associated with low-cost Chinese manufacturing.
There was a time Japan used to be that way before it became more developed. It's just, when you're a poor country, it's like one time I met somebody from China, and I was asking him about its development, and then what about issues of corruption. And he said, look at it this way. When Deng Xiaoping became leader, he talked about the reform and opening up. He said to the Chinese, get rich. They didn't know how. They weren't educated because Mao didn't have allowed for education. Mm-hmm. He shut down a lot of the schools. So how are they going to figure it out? They just had to figure it out on their own because they were not getting support from America. They were not getting support from other countries. So they just had to figure it out on their own. So that's important to address, because when Trump said, oh, we Americans built China, that's not exactly true. He could say that about South Korea, but he can't say that about China.
China's been around for thousands of years.
Yes, and during the reform and opening up, they basically had to rebuild on their own. It wasn't the Americans. Of course, when the Americans were buying all the Chinese exports, yes, the Chinese were becoming more successful, but the fact is the prior presidents allowed it to happen. President Trump, as you're saying, those days are over. But this, in the long run, will also benefit China because they will become a more trusted business partner. If they can crack down on the intellectual property rights, if they can honor agreements and then not be the copycat nation, and then they can be trusted, this is going to make China just as strong and as rich as America.
I don't know if we want that. How long have you lived in China?
I've lived there for 10 years. Now, also, something very important to remember is I am, and you've already witnessed already, I always speak my mind. Now, if China is as bad as people claim it is, I would have been dead by now. I lived there for 10 years, and people are happy with me there because the Chinese know that in order for them to get stronger, they need to listen to outsiders like me. They need to listen to independent thinkers like me who can provide them with a very honest perspective on how they can further move up their development. And they are. They are working very hard on creating that type of rapid development that will welcome more foreign investments and more foreign companies, but it's going to take time.
Well, we'll have to check back with you, and a number of months and see how
Sure.
things work. And
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe we'll have
Chinese
to.
New Year's is coming up a few months from now.
We could go explode some stuff downtown.
Well, maybe we
They
we
do
need to
love
go to China.
fireworks.
Maybe
If
we
you
need
want
go
to come,
China.
we would be very happy to welcome you in Beijing.
Thank you very much. I've been there. It's a long flight.
It is. I came from there to yesterday, and I can't sleep on planes.
Wow.
Yeah,
What were you
13
saying,
hours.
Chuck? That's great.
No, we'll put it on the list of places we may go.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You should.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Tom, and people will purchase the book. I want to thank everybody for watching. We've had over 1,100 people watching us this afternoon, so that's really great. I want to remind everybody that Crowdsource the Truth cannot continue to bring you these types of amazing international guests and incredibly well-researched programs without your support. So people can go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become sponsors of the show. We've got this YouTube terms of service change happening this week. So if Crowdsource the Truth disappears off the face of the Google sphere, you'll still be able to find us at patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. So get over there, become a sponsor. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see everyone tomorrow.